We have some public comments here related to development. As long as they're not related to any specific development, I think we're all right. So we have one for development and utilities, but as long as we're not mentioning any specific development in that those comments, we should be fine. Right? Is that right, Attorney Smith?
It should be fine,
Okay.
right? Yes. We will pay close attention.
Okay.
But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And that is just for the reason of protecting those public hearings as they come aboard. All right. We'll call it. Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order the regular Board of Trustees meeting. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Karspeck.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy.
Here.
Trustee Hardy.
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht.
Here.
Trustee Wing.
Here.
Trustee Ayers.
Yes.
And Trustee Kurtz will be absent this evening.
All right. Next on our agenda is citizen participation. This is a chance for folks in the audience to speak to anything that is not on tonight's agenda. We have 4 signed up. And again, if one of these or 2 of these might be related to development and utilities, it says as long as we don't mention any specific upcoming development that'll be under a public hearing, we should be all right. But we'll start out with Linda Wilson. Welcome.
Hi. So my name is Linda Wilson and I live at 1461 Merlette Street here in Berthoud. And last session, Amber was here talking about a possible cat leash ordinance. And I met her at the post office just occasionally, and she said she heard back. And one of the issues was that her property did not have access to public property, and so the cat leash ordinance may not apply to her. It was private property type things. So I just wanted to let you know, in Heron Point, the cats come into our property from across the street, which is public. They come in from the back area, which is public area. It's an open area. Neither of our neighbors have cats. And the issue is they're using our vegetable garden as a litter box, and they're harassing our birds. So just another comment that maybe you would consider a possibility for keeping cats under control.
Okay.
And I do have a specific thing, and I guess my question is, when you're talking about public notices coming up, is that public notice going to be talking about the development on 2nd Street between Mountain and Welsh?
Would that be your final comment?
Yeah, my question is, I was wanting to know what an update on that property is.
Okay. I'm just trying to. Do you know the property on 2nd and Welsh? What we're talking about here?
We're talking about the old skate park and streets building?
Right,
Ooh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. The last one here was December the 10th, and I haven't heard anything, and I don't know where to go to see, where it is.
Yeah, that's fine.
in
That
the
shouldn't be a
process.
public hearing. I don't think we already own the land. So.
Yeah, that won't be a public hearing, but there will be lots of public meetings about it.
You want to give me an update of where we're at?
Yeah, so we're working with a gentleman who specializes in redevelopment projects in downtown. He's running some financial pro forma analyses with us, and he's been working with the architect on some of the initial cost estimating, at least for just the high level concept that we put together, so that we can present back to you what we think the best financial scenario is for the town to partner with the library and potentially other developer to do the remainder of the site.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next would be Megan Hooper. Megan, though you already stated your name and address, would you please do that again for the record? Thank you.
Sure. My name is Megan Hooper. I live at 1605 Maple Drive here in Berthoud. I'm coming here tonight out of concern for what's happening in some of our nearby cities and towns that I think could impact Berthoud in the future. Currently in Longmont, in residential neighborhoods, a for-profit company is purchasing homes, renovating them, and they're becoming sober living or rehabilitation centers for convicted sex offenders. And currently in one neighborhood, approximately 150 feet from each other, there is currently one home that's already housing 6 sex offenders in a residential neighborhood. And they purchased a second home about 150 feet away and are currently renovating it for the same purpose. They were operating in Firestone. Firestone implemented an emergency ordinance, so that could not happen any longer. Longmont is now facing the same issue. That company has now moved on to Longmont. And I don't think it's far-fetched at this point to think, as they've been moving in neighboring towns and cities, that they could very well move up the road to Berthoud from Longmont if Longmont and they're looking at implementing a similar ordinance to prevent that from keep happening in their city, that they'll look to move on, and we're obviously a close neighbor. So I guess my question is, I don't know if Berthoud already has something in their building codes or ordinances that in areas designated as residential, if someone could purchase a home and remodel it so it could house, let's say, sex offenders, or it could become a rehab facility, a sober living facility, a group home, any of those different things. I'm not sure if that's already in existence. And either that, I know we have ordinance 1339, which is a great start as far as doing the setbacks from sex offenders from certain areas. I don't know if building on that to strengthen that would also be a possibility to prevent multiple sex offenders from residing in a home, because now in Longmont, they've created these pockets and concentrations of sex offenders in residential neighborhoods.
Thank you. Let me turn it over to Administrator Kirk here. I know you emailed us at Mayor Pro Tem, forward that on. Thank you for doing that. And Attorney Smith, you were looking at that?
Yes, and we will look into it further, but currently that is not allowed in Berthoud. Our
Okay.
current code restricts residents of sex offenders to no more than 2.
2 per unit?
Yeah, and really no more than 1, and 2 if there's a marriage relationship. So we are already.
Which code was that in?
It's in our definitions, in our zoning code. It's the definition for, again, we will provide something, look into this a little bit more, but it's our definition of family under our zoning code. And that's typically where this is housed in a lot of codes. You have a
Okay.
definition of family, and then you define what a single-family unit is later in the code. And
Okay.
so that single-family unit can only be occupied by a family.
Okay.
So that's why it's in the family definitions. I should point out that the state legislature in 2024 made changes generally to an ordinance like the town of Berthoud's, which restricted residents, how many people could live in a residence throughout the town by telling towns that they could not restrict the number of people in a home on the basis of a family relationship. They could only do it if there were some sort of public health issue associated with that. So they're two separate issues.
Okay.
But we do have to we will be making some changes to our code to make sure that we update it in compliance with the 2024 legislative change that makes the town not be able to limit the number of people based on a familial relationship.
Mhm.
But the question, I think, is whether or not that limitation somehow also would impinge on the town's ability to do what we're already doing, which is to make sure that there is no more than one, or two if they're related, sex offenders in a residence. So that's gonna take a little bit more research, so.
Okay, thank you. We are working on it.
Okay.
Looks like you had another question.
Oh, no.
Okay, if you have any more, Attorney Smith or Administrator Kirk are great on that, or you can forward it, you can send it to us and we'll forward it on to them.
Okay,
Just wanted to thank you, because otherwise, you're putting this on our agenda, so we really appreciate it.
okay, no problem. I have family in Longmont. That's how I knew about it.
Yeah.
And so
No,
I just
thank you.
figured it was
Yeah.
worth bringing up.
It definitely is.
Because it's close by.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for coming in tonight. Okay, next, Mark Broughton.
Good evening. My name is Mark Broughton. I live at 748 Mountain Avenue, corner to this building. I'm here to express my concern about the growth of Berthoud in general, no specifics, and the speed at which it's growing. It's turning, from my perspective, it's turning into a dormitory town, and I want to encourage the Town of Berthoud board, the planning, and everybody else to be considerate to develop the utilities and the infrastructure as well. Because the last thing I want to do is lose the character of Berthoud, which I love, and I'll stand for and help any way I can. And I noticed that the boarding, the welcome to Berthoud signs no longer say the Garden of City of Colorado, or Garden Town in Colorado. And anyway, I just want to express how the image of Berthoud, as you view it coming over the horizon, or looking out of Berthoud to the horizons, I still want to see the mountains. And I still want to see Berthoud, which is a whole load of trees, not a whole load of buildings. And I applaud your addressing the dark sky initiative. I don't know when that's going to be in full-blown initiation, but when I come over during the day, especially around the bypass, I see houses everywhere. Now, as I come into the center of Berthoud, towards the center, I see trees. I don't see high rises. I don't see buildings necessarily. I see green. I see character. I see history. I see culture. And I want to see community. I don't want to see people leaving Berthoud to go elsewhere during the day. I want them to come into Berthoud, bring them tax dollars, etc. I also don't want to see the property values suppressed because of the overbuilding. So I encourage you, and you're doing a grand job, and I applaud you for that. But there's some of the developments which I won't mention are intending to put large buildings, high buildings, which will destroy the character, in my view, of the surroundings and the ability to see the horizon and the mountains and the plains from the center. So, and the last thing, or the last two things, is traffic planning towards I-25 from the west side of Berthoud. I'm concerned about, because I see no plan to develop across the railroad through Spartan Avenue or Water Avenue, or getting off the 287 onto the northern exit, if there were a possibility of putting one there. So bypassing Berthoud Center so it can be more people-oriented and pedestrian-oriented, I don't see that in the very near future. So I encourage you to be on CDOT to say, look, Berthoud needs some help and some vision there, because I don't see that vision in play. Lastly,
Thank you very much.
utilities.
We're past
Okay.
3 minutes here.
Utilities, I'll hand over to my
Yeah,
wife.
absolutely, we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kate Broughton. I am also at 748 Mountain Avenue. I'm going to read from my document because help me remember. So I was talking about water rights and fund transparency. So over the years, developers in Berthoud have contributed significant funds through cash in lieu payments and water tap fees intended to secure water rights for the town. Could you please not immediately, but at some point, clarify how much of that money remains unspent and how it's been used, and whether, I know there's been a purchase recently, I believe, and whether any of it has been directed towards infrastructure like the SCADA master plan. Is there a publicly accessible record that clearly separates developer-contributed water acquisition funds from general capital funds used for infrastructure projects like water treatment, storage, SCADA systems? As Berthoud continues to grow, what steps are being taken to ensure water rights acquisitions keep pace with development? And is that reflected in the capital improvement plan? And then moving on, so does the water utilities project budget include any developer cash in lieu water tap funds? If so, can you confirm how those are being used? With Berthoud's development boom, are water rights being purchased at a pace that aligns with the projected increase in water demand and new homes, etc.? Will the SCADA master plan be funded entirely from separate infrastructure capital funds? Are there overlapping funds? Anyway, so it's just the funding thing. And then can the board commit to providing the public with a clear itemized report showing how developer paid water fees have been used over the last 10 years and ensure those funds are tracked separately? I'm very, very interested in the Wagner Farm Park project, because that's a big arboretum and that's a lot of water, and there's big planning in there, but also with an arboretum in England, that's a 5, 10, 50-year project that is not, it's going to be done tomorrow. So really having that delivered to the community in a very deliberate way to say it's not going to be done tomorrow. It's not going to be done tomorrow. It's going to be a very, very long project, because I think that gives you breathing space to actually get the water balanced, etc. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we give you a lot of questions, but I'm trying to give you a brief response. And you guys sent a very thorough email too, so thank you very much for that. Did we respond by chance to that? Oh, to Ton Hillebrand for that. Okay. Do you mind just a basic overview on?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I haven't seen that email, so I
No, I know.
apologize.
I'll forward that to our town administrator.
I think there's some easy answers to a lot of those questions. The first is the developer contributions for cash in lieu of water dedication are all accounted for in their own fund. It's in our budget, it's on our website. There's, I don't know the number off the top of my head. I think there's a little over $22 million in that fund right now. We've bought hundreds of acres or hundreds of acre feet of water over the last 5 years with those funds, and we continue to acquire and develop new water resources all the time. Tonight's a good time to be here because most of the agenda is about water, including a presentation on water rights and water rights development. So good time to be here tonight. Sorry, there's a long list of questions. I'm trying to capture them all. From a water infrastructure standpoint, we have water infrastructure master plans that were, as the board knows, water and wastewater infrastructure master plans that were just approved last year. Those are available. You're welcome to review those anytime you'd like. The same is true with a raw water master plan that kind of outlines the history of our water resources and where our focus is moving forward. That is available online, and we're happy to provide that to you as well. Let's see, what else am I missing? Spartan Avenue, the plans are 100% designed. The railroad has reviewed those plans to connect Spartan Avenue to Nebraska across the railroad tracks. There is some pending rulemaking going on at the PUC that's kind of put us on hold. It has to do with the long-term operation and maintenance of those crossings and what the town's obligations may or may not be. And so our attorney that has kind of specific knowledge or specific expertise with railroad processes has advised us to hold until that rulemaking process is done. And as soon as it is, or as soon as we feel like it's clear enough what the direction will be, we'll go ahead and file through the PUC to get that crossing formally approved and start construction, of course, pending board approval. But we do have the funds, we believe, to do that.
And Spartan will connect to 287 too, right?
Spartan will ultimately connect to 287 as a result of the Legacy Park development. Were it not for that project, that connection probably would not occur. But that is expected to connect from 287 all the way to County Line Road. It will probably not continue east of County Line Road for a very long time into the future, if ever.
If you have any further questions, we can, but if you have any.
One clarification, if I may. Is that a railroad crossing or bridge?
It is a
It's
railroad
a
crossing.
Yeah, it's not, not
Thank you.
that great.
It's an at-grade railroad crossing.
And then I'll make sure that forward that email on to Administrator Kirk. So thank you. We have no one else signed up. Is anyone wishing to speak that did not have a chance to sign up? All right, thank you. We can move on now to our regular agenda tonight, and we'll start off with consent. Would trustees like anything removed from consent?
I would. Item D.
Item D. Anything else?
No.
Is there a motion to approve consent minus item D?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right, trustee Wing has moved on this. Is that trustee Ayers has seconded? Clerk, can we have a roll call vote?
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
trustee Hardy,
Yes.
trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy,
Yes.
trustee Albrecht, Mayor Karsbeck.
Yes, thank you. All right, items removed from consent will be considered next. So North Berthoud Parkway Trail Gap budget update. Trustee Wing?
Yeah, I think Chris was just gonna give just a couple more details on that.
Yep, thank you, trustee Wing, for pointing that off, to give us an opportunity to give you a little more detail. So, when we did the project originally, our construction cost estimates include, in addition to the construction, includes construction administration, things like traffic control and others. We believe that most of that traffic control could exist or occur outside of the right-of-way because the trail is all being constructed at the edge of right-of-way. CDOT, because this is a grant-funded project, they get to review and approve our traffic control plans. They would not allow us to barricade and perform all the work off the edge of the roadway without flaggers when certain types of construction activity were occurring. And so anytime you have to station traffic control flaggers and control or close one half of the road, it's a very expensive endeavor, as you can imagine, just the time associated with doing that. So there was an increase in project expense associated with that. The other primary increase in project expense are some buried stormwater manholes. We believed they were outside of the trail alignment, and they were actually very close to, and so we needed to bring those to grade so that they wouldn't conflict with our construction, and so there's some additional costs associated with that effort. But most of the increase in costs are associated with the traffic control. Some other changes that were required by CDOT as part of their review process that occurred after we had gone to bid, and then the raising of the manholes to grade.
Could you just describe exactly where this is?
So the North Berthoud Parkway Trail, I apologize, it is on the west side of Berthoud Parkway. We should have included a map. Sometimes we just forget that not everybody knows where everything is. The North Berthoud Parkway Trail, you approved for construction late last year. It's on the west side of Berthoud Parkway. It starts at Water Avenue, and it heads north to County Road 10E on the west side of the road.
Okay, yeah, all the new cement they just did.
That's correct.
And then it's the crossover between the existing trail and this one, that's what we're referring to right here?
That's correct. So
Okay.
the trail will go from Water Avenue, it'll head north. It will swing back onto the shoulder with some concrete barricades where it crosses the handy ditch, continue up to County Road 10E. We did actually, that's one of the other changes, thank you, that just reminded me. The other change in that change order is an improvement of the ramp at County Road 10E. On paper, it looked like the ramp would all work fine, but the alignment is a little bit strange. We think it feels wrong, and so we're gonna tear that out and straighten it and widen that ramp when you get to 10E. So that was the other change in that. Thank you.
And so will there be some type of lighting there now with a crossing?
There will not be any lighting,
Okay.
no pedestrian or there's no rectangular flashing beacons or anything like that installed as part of that crossing, except that at 10E. But on Berthoud Parkway at Water Avenue, there is a signal arm that will be installed that will actually hang out over the road. So unlike the rapid rectangular flashing beacons that are right here in front of Town Hall at 9th Street, you push it and the lights flash on either side of the road. This crossing, because Berthoud Parkway has higher speeds and a lot more heavily trafficked at certain times of the day, this will actually have signal arms that extend out over the road like a traffic signal. They'll still be button activated, but they will flash red when somebody's crossing that.
So like road crossing?
Yeah, a little bit. There's a good example of it on, it's just on the west side of Boyd Lake in Loveland. That's probably the best example of one of those signals I can think of. I can't remember the county road that it's on.
But that'll be at Water, not at 10E?
That will be at Water.
Okay.
The north-south crossing on 10E has very little traffic, so we didn't feel like there was a need for a signal there, at least for the bicycle or pedestrian traffic. Certainly, there's a lot of traffic there. with vehicular traffic, and there will need to be some intersection improvements done there probably the next 3 to 5 years, depending on traffic growth.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul, on that. All right, is there a motion to approve item D?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem has moved on this. Is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Wing is seconded. Clerk, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Trustee Albrecht, Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. Okay. Our second regular agenda item tonight is the Fire District Tax Measure. This is a presentation. Very honored. Thank you very much for having our Fire District staff here tonight. And Chief Charles is here to present. Thank you for coming out.
Good evening. My name's Stephen Charles. I live at 1029 Berthoud Parkway. Mayor,
You need a
trustees,
brief second?
pardon me?
I was informing him that the computer installed updates and restarted.
Oh, of course. It always does that, doesn't it?
Thank you for allowing us to come before you, Mayor, and the trustees, and you, Administrator Kurt. Appreciate the time. I'd like to just, before I get into the presentation on our tax initiative with election is May 6th, I'd like to just get a little bit of information about the district if you don't mind. We were formed in 1950. We cover 103 square miles. We cover portions of Weld, Larimer, and Boulder County. We have 2 stations, one at 23 and County Road 8, as well as our station downtown at 275 Mountain Avenue. Our business offices are at 248 Welch. And without being, let me direct your attention to, I have my Chief of Staff, Jill Wilson, here with me tonight. And then also Division Chief Kukin, who will be making most of the presentation about the tax initiative. We have actually, our optimum staffing is 40. They're not obviously on duty all at the same time, so we have 4 people out of Station 2, which is the West Station, and 6 people downtown. The reason that our call volume right now is about 2,200 calls a year. As we go as far east as the east side of I-25, north to Highway 60, 1 mile west of Carter Lake and down to Yellowstone Road. So we do have a large area to cover. The reason that we're here tonight is that we took a look at our 2025 budget, and as we were moving into it, we saw a deficit of just over $508,000 from 2024 to 2025. We are 89% of our budget is tax, property tax. 11% is non-tax. Now, 11% basically it's $411,000 for 2025. 300,000 of that is interest on reserves. The other the 111,000 is basically projected revenues that we would, if we're deployed on wildland, which we have a contract with the state of Colorado, we're a cooperator, and of course we're reimbursed by the state and the feds when we go on those calls. However, those are projected. Of course, with what's going on in our country today, we don't anticipate, even though we projected at $300,000 in interest for our reserves, I don't believe we're going to see that this year. We're probably going to see $50,000 or $60,000 less than what we projected. So what we took a look at is what can we do? The state of Colorado does have control over the residential assessment rates. And what they do is they take the market value, which they consider to be the real value. Our assessors then take a look at that and they apply that residential or commercial assessment rate to the market or actual value, which gives us an assessed value. We can tax on that assessed value with our current mill levy. We haven't had a tax increase as far as our mill levy since 2001. And that's when we built Station 2 and hired additional staffing. So what we took a look at is, as we look at our budget, it's dependent on property taxes. And of course, we see our residential growth. The assessment rate, obviously, for residential is much less than what commercial growth is. And so we looked at different options, and as we were sitting around thinking about this, the state of Colorado last year through a House bill allowed us to pass the bill that would allow us to impose a sales tax, if you will, if voted on by the taxpayers. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Kukin to give you a little bit more information about that. I have some additional information that may be of value to you if you had basically asking questions, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Andrew. I didn't touch anything that damaged that, did I?
No. I have a couple of graphics that'd be helpful for you guys to be able to see.
bear with technology for a moment.
I have a question. So the fire district can run its own, I've just never heard of running your own election.
Yes.
Trying to talk to the clerk about this, but
Yeah,
this is
I should have clarified that for you, Mayor. The fire district is a special taxing district under Title 32. So yes, we can have our own election. Typically, our elections are in the odd years, if you will, and in May. So our election is May 6th. We also we can get on the general election. However, we felt that we wanted this to be a fire district election and not tied into all the other agencies that may have tax issues on the ballot. So.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to ask some questions and hear about what we're working on here. As the chief was referring to, the Colorado legislature has adjusted its assessment rates and lowered those in reply to the Colorado citizenship asking for property tax relief. Perhaps an unanticipated consequence of that was fire districts across the state have been adversely affected by reduced revenues. As you can see in the graphic there, since 2020, the assessment rates have been creeping down. And that's good for property taxes, but it's bad for our special districts. What we have seen is our calls for service have gone up about 72% since the last time we asked for some additional funding. And our expenses have outpaced our property tax revenue growth. The chief outlined some other ways that we do receive some funding, so we've been able to keep afloat through that. But because of that mismatch, we're now seeing the deficit that he mentioned. The legislature identified that this was causing problems at the state level and said that they were going to offer us some backfill. So they said, we'll make you whole for 2024. They gave us some money to compensate for that while they worked out a solution. Their solution was the legislation that the chief referred to, which for the first time in state history allows special districts to ask the voters to approve a sales tax. And that was their proposed solution. So that's the direction we're looking at. Now, one of the common questions we've been getting from property owners is, my assessed value on my home has gone up. I'm paying more taxes, more property taxes now than I ever have. How is the district short on money? And that's a good question. What's going on there is the Larimer County assessors have raised their assessed values. Most of you probably received a notice in the mail saying your assessed values have gone up. They have increased that in response to the residential assessment rate going down, and we multiply that times our mill levy, and that's where we get our revenues from. Now, the district serves Weld, Boulder, and Larimer counties, and not everyone's assessment rates have gone up. Boulder and Weld did not see the same increase that Larimer did, so that deficit is actually because of those properties that didn't see that increase. So there's a little, it's covered by words at the moment, but the equation is the state assessment rate gets multiplied by the assessed values and then multiplied by our mill. The only number we can control on that is our mill levy. What that has done is created a pretty volatile budget for us. It fluctuates quite a bit up and down, and it's really hard for us to do responsible financial planning on a long-term basis with this. You know, I'm trying to fund a capital plan 5 and 10 years out, and not knowing what the state's going to do with these assessment rates and the county's going to do with the assessed values makes it very difficult for us to do that. So the state solution was, why don't you guys diversify, look for something a little more stable to add to that, and they suggested this sales tax. So we presented that to our board of directors, and the board decided to go for a 1% sales tax. So it's not advancing my slide. Okay, I'm gonna wing it unless you can help me out, Christian, with this. It's no longer on my desktop here. So we're pursuing a 1% sales tax. So that'd be a penny on a dollar, $10 on 100, $1 on $100. So a low tax. And our board of directors was very interested in minimizing the impact on the cost of living for our citizens. So the board instructed us to be sure that we weren't taxing prescription drugs, food, things like that is going to impact the everyday life. Thank you, Christian. We started looking into it and figured out that the state will actually define some things that we cannot tax on, and those are listed here. Food, prescriptions, diapers, most medical supplies, electricity and gas, sales to benefit charities, in schools, cigarettes and marijuana, farm equipment, machinery and tools. There's more things not taxed than are when you read this list. And the nice thing about that is it should have a minimal impact on those with a fixed income concerning the cost of living. What that did, though, was made it very difficult for us to estimate how much money we would be able to collect from that to offset the deficits that we're facing. So we reached out to the Department of Revenue for some help with that. They have an Office of Research and Analysis because we need to be able to provide a number of what we're going to collect. We're not trying to be reckless with this. We don't want to make this a money grab. We're just trying to offset our losses. So we reached out to the Department of Revenue. And they told us, based on the numbers they have and that long list of tax exempt items, we could realistically expect about $196,000 off of the 2024 numbers. For the ballot question, we had to be able to project that into 2026. So we used the 9% that we saw in the town of Berthoud's anticipated growth in their budget and projected that out. The Department of Revenue cannot anticipate what online sales, what they're calling click and ship, like your Amazon purchases. They don't get that reported to them in the same way, so it's difficult for them to anticipate that. We added a 25% margin for that, and then an additional 25% just for the uncertainties in our economy right now. So our anticipated 2026 fiscal impact is about $363,000. I don't anticipate that, but the thing is, if we collect more than we tell the voters, we have to return it. So we decided to aim high on that rather than trying to figure out how to hand back money to sales tax customers. So again, that's for qualifying purchases, and we had that long list of things that wouldn't be taxed. If you look then at the chart there, I compared where Berthoud would fall both in Weld and Larimer County because they're different tax rates compared to some of our neighbors. You can see Loveland's pretty low. They have discussed increasing their sales tax up in Loveland in the 26-27 election cycles. And we've been told Fort Collins will also be increasing theirs probably by 1% in 2026. So this would not put Berthoud really any higher than the median for our community, especially if those other increases happen. We think that this is going to give us the ability to have a diversified and more stable funding mechanism than what we currently have. That's our objective here, is to try and make ourselves a responsible government agency that can plan responsibly into the future. So this is the direction we're heading right now. Like Chief said, this will be on the May 6th ballot. We have a factual summary on our website and our board of directors' position of advocacy on it. And we wanted to be sure the town is aware of what we were going after and make ourselves available to answer any questions or help you with any concerns that you may have regarding that.
Thank you. Great presentation. Trustees, questions?
Yeah.
Trustee Wing.
Yeah, can you, I'm just not, that 25% on the ballot safety margin, and then that ends up being 363. Can you explain that just a little bit more? I'm not quite following that.
Okay, yeah, and I blew through that quickly because I was trying to be brief, so I will definitely explain that better. The state will make us project a number for the voters that'll be written in our ballot question for what the projected fiscal impact is. So voters have an understanding of what it is they're actually voting for. So if we go above that number, Berthoud brings a lot of tax dollars in and we end up collecting in excess of whatever number we project, we have to find a way to return it to the taxpayers. Now, no one can tell us how to do that. The Department of Revenue isn't even very clear on how do you return tax dollars. So our actual number is listed up there under the sales tax. If you go to 2026, 232 would be the projection based on what the Department of Revenue gave us. They talked about how we're not sure what the click and ship numbers are going to be, so they said you should add 25%. And then we discussed as a team and with our board, we really don't want to be in a position where we misled the voters by giving them a number that was too low. We'd rather go high, and if we collect more than the 232, we should still be under the 363. So the maximum fiscal impact that we could anticipate is the 363. And hopefully, it's somewhere in between those two numbers.
So, again, so the BFPD tax for 26 projected is 232,000.
That's correct.
Then you call the online sales 25%, which it's a little hard for me to figure out 25% of what, because it
Sure.
doesn't seem to correlate to the assessed value. And then you combine those two together, you're over, 500,000 plus.
Yeah, and that's not a summing column, that is, we just put a 25% of that number and added it in twice. And if,
Oh, so you added 25% to the 232, that now becomes the 291.
exactly,
And the margin is what you aren't supposed to go over,
Another
so the
25.
292 is coming in under that.
correct.
But if you
yeah.
do come in over the 291, you don't have to return it, but if you go over the 363, you do?
Yes,
Okay,
So it's not an arbitrary, it's an accurate, you're trying to be as accurate as possible, but you're
Right.
putting it at a high level just in case, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the Department of Revenue spent a couple weeks trying to come up with the most accurate number they could give us, but then they put these little qualifications on there, like, well, we don't know what we're gonna
Yeah,
get
right,
from
yeah.
Clickagen. And also, you should probably project high, because if you go above, you have to return it.
Isn't there a way to write it so you get to keep any excess? Isn't there
No.
like, oh, I
I don't
thought we
believe
did that
so.
with the rec center, didn't we?
In talking with the Department of Revenue, because of the way state statute's written, in that first full calendar year, you have a projected maximum amount that you're gonna collect. That way the taxpayers know basically how much tax is gonna be collected on the sales tax. And as Chief Kukin mentioned, if we go over that, the state of Colorado had no answer for us to how do you return sales tax to individuals. So the only way that in talking with our attorney, the only way is we'd have to have another election. So we'd have an additional cost of having because it's a Tabor issue, that it would have to be a mail-in ballot. So we'd have to spend X number of dollars, if you will, to have another election to ask the taxpayers, can we keep this extra $50,000, which the election could be cost more than that.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
better to
I
aim
guess I was
high.
under the wrong impression. I thought that we wrote ours in a way that said any collection over and above that, the town would be able to keep. So I was wondering if you guys could do that too.
No, because it's under a different House bill.
You guys, hey,
Yeah, no, it's
you guys
totally
really
different. No.
tough, man. All right.
So-
And then one more follow-up question. So all the towns listed, that's the percentage based off the assessed value, correct? That 6.7, et cetera, et cetera.
That's their sales tax.
That's their sales
That's
tax?
their sales tax.
So when it says Berthoud Weld 7.9, and we come over to the left, and it says Berthoud 4, what's the correlation between the 4 and the 7.9? Do you understand the question?
Yes, so the sales tax is calculated as a sum of those in that, on the left column that applies. So the town of Berthoud is at 4%, anywhere in the town of Berthoud regardless of the county. Berthoud Fire is asking for 1%, and then you need to add whatever county applies, and then the state, and that'll get you your total tax. So Weld County, if you were shopping in a town of Berthoud business that's a Weld County, it would have that lower rate, which is 7.9. Town of Berthoud and Larimer County would be at 8.7.
One question on that. So if I take the state, the town, and the fire department, that's the 7.9. I see over there Berthoud Weld 7.9. Where does the county 0.8 come into play on that? Do you understand?
No, the green arrow on the right is Berthoud Weld.
Yep.
So, where it says Berthoud Larimer, it's at 8.7. So it's because Larimer County has an 8%.
Oh, got it, I got it.
Okay.
That's not illustrated on here, doesn't say that anywhere on here, but
Right.
I understand. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Sure.
If I can,
yeah.
go ahead, Mayor.
No, please continue.
If I could, I just want to share a couple things with you, because there has been, when Chief Kukin was talking about the property tax being higher this year than last year, one of the things is that they basically, on all residential properties, once they determined what your assessed value was, they dropped all residential properties by $55,000. That turned out to be about a $350,000 deficit to us when we took a look at commercial and residential. The commercial, what they forgave basically on your assessed value for commercial So if they came up with $100,000 assessed value on a commercial property, really all we could tax on was the 70%, was the 70%, which would be $70,000. And where if it was $100,000 assessed value in a house, they dropped it by $55,000, we'd be taxing on $45,000. And so that was only for 2024 because they dropped that on us. How they compensated for that this year is they reduced the residential assessment and commercial rates. So people are seeing higher tax or higher property, and we're seeing lower tax. In Larimer County, within our jurisdiction, our revenues only increased by 3.11%. That's barely COLA. In Weld County, it dropped 24.4%, and in Boulder County, it dropped 1.4%. So that when we took the look at the numbers for Larimer, Weld, and Boulder County, and then we looked at our specific ownership taxes as well, which is the registration of new vehicles. Everyone shares a portion of that. We took a look at this $508,943 loss between 2024 and 2025. So.
Yeah, you guys get treated a lot differently than the municipal government.
We're a totally different animal.
It's kind of surprising that
Yeah.
our most core services are in such a precarious position with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. Does this affect construction, like implements, like if you're gonna buy a $1 million excavator or something? Do you guys tax on that?
I know
ag
that-
exemption, but I don't know if there's a construction.
I know we can't collect the sales tax will not apply to farm equipment. I don't know if it applies to a road grader.
Okay.
To be honest with you. There's 18 sections or commodities that they identified, the state identified that we cannot tax on, and Chief Q
Yeah, that was a really good-
identified a small number of those.
Why was cigarettes on there? Why can't you tax?
Because there's a state tax on
Oh,
it.
they're already taxing it.
Same thing with gas and oil.
Okay.
And this little table on the left, that 1%, that's the new tax you're recommending, right?
Yes.
And that's the equivalent of $232,000, is that accurate?
Based on the Department of Revenue figures, that's
Okay.
their best estimate for us.
And then, do you have any debt?
Do we have any debt?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
You had mentioned interest reserves before, but your debt and the interest you pay on that has nothing to do with the interest reserves,
No.
right?
No. So our debt is in our capital fund, and that's been projected out. Where we're seeing that $508,946 or whatever it is in our operating budget, not our capital budget. There was questions that regarding capital versus versus our general fund, if you will. And one of the things not under state statute, but when you take a look at the Colorado Government Financial Officers Association, they recommend that we carry 35% of our budget in reserves. Our board has taken a much more conservative approach to that, so we have over 50% in the event that because our tax dollars come in March, April, May, and so we have to have money to operate. So we have in the past used our reserves to keep the doors open for the first 3 to 4 months out of the year.
And if you don't do the reserves, do they roll over to the next year?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we maintain it. We basically maintain a savings account.
and can I ask you what your debt is?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I can get that for you, but I'm sorry, I don't have it
Do you
off the
have
top of my head.
any, 100,000 versus
Oh.
2 million? I mean, do you have any?
Oh, no, there's. Pardon me?
Okay.
Yeah, let's say over $1 million.
And in your budget, you've got principal and interest that are servicing that debt,
Yes,
correct?
yes,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah, and we projected $300,000 for 2025. That's before we saw what was coming with everything that's taking place after the first of the year. And in talking, we had our our board meeting today at 3 o'clock. Our finance folks are there. And he was saying that based on where we're at now, we're not gonna see that $300,000. So he's thinking we're gonna see 50 to 60, maybe $75,000 less than what we're projecting.
Is that federal funding? What is?
No, it's not, no, that would be just interest on having money in the bank.
Oh, okay, great,
Yeah.
okay,
So,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Other questions? I promised the audience, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to this? Well, we have the chief here. Linda, if you could come to the front.
Yeah, thanks.
This is just a curious thing. When I read this bottom line,
You might just state your name and address
yes,
again? I'm sorry.
surely, Linda Wilson, 1461 Merlette Street here in Berthoud.
Appreciate
On the back of the sheet that we all got, it said that it ensures that visitors and commuters who also benefit from your services would contribute their share.
Yes.
How would you figure that out, that
Well-
be that many visitors coming?
Well, we know that,
sales
what's
tax?
the number on Carter Lake?
I can definitely speak to that.
Okay, great.
We're told that about 1 million people visit Carter Lake every year.
Wow.
500,000 to 1 million was the county's estimate. And those people drive through our town, they purchase fuel and food and everything else as they're coming through. And then I-25 is about 2.5 million, and then 287, I didn't actually get a number from the state on that. But all those people pass through, and they use our services. They call 911 when they need us. So rather than passing more property tax on to the people who have already paid their fare, a good portion of our calls are from these visitors to our district. So we want to be able to make sure everyone gets a portion of that and not pass it all on to our citizens.
Okay. I just didn't comprehend that there'd be that many to Carter Lake.
I was surprised.
Yeah, in passing through, but they wouldn't be paying it on their gas and they wouldn't be paying it on their food, but you guys
Well-
have the numbers, so it's just a
Yeah.
curious thing, so.
When we're speaking of food, we can't tax on, for example, groceries, but there can be a tax on, let's say, at Subway. So it would apply to.
So restaurants
Yes,
and stuff like that.
yes, it would apply, yeah. And, and when they buy gas, they buy the Slurpee or whatever, I mean, so we're trying to diversify, if you will. We've been solely relying on property tax, and what we see is that we don't, the state is the one who determines what the assessment rates are. And as Chief Dukin showed, they've gone down consistently over the years. And the only other option we would have if we don't go to a sales tax is to ask folks for a property tax increase. And the whole message behind what's been happening for the last year and a half is lower our property taxes. So it's kind of a catch-22 for us.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was an excellent question too.
Will, one more.
Yes, trustee Wink.
What, you said a number. What are you projecting your deficit to be right now? 300,000+?
Well, if you took a look at our budget right now.
Yep.
Our deficit for 2025 compared to 2024.
Yep.
Is $508,953.
Okay, so that's the huge question. What do you do if you don't get a tax or?
What do we do?
Yep.
We're gonna regroup, and take a look at. I think that we've cut about as much out of the budget as we can, to maintain our level of service. We would have to go back and look at talk to our board. Do we go back in November? I mean, this is important. This is something that is gonna be long-term. Like, this is not gonna be a quick fix either. We know that. And as Berthoud grows, we're gonna see obviously an increase in commercial over time. And so we'd have to go back to our board and say, hey, the vote was turned down, and we may have to do a survey to find out why was it turned down.
What's your total revenue budget?
Our total revenue budget for 2025 is $7,333,000.
That's about 8%.
Pardon me?
The 500,000 is about 8%
Yeah,
shortfall.
and last year our budget was $7,842,000 and change. So,
So you gotta find 500,000 in savings if this stuff doesn't go through somewhere.
so,
It's 500,000 in savings after already cutting 500,000. So
Yeah.
we've already cut about as deep as we can without having to reduce services and it will be out for the community.
Well, thank you. I think I speak on behalf of all the trustees, and we really appreciate what you guys do.
thank you,
For
I
sure.
can never tell you enough that fire a month ago or so, you guys did an incredible job.
thank you.
I know, Chief, you were going on a call when the meeting with the mayor and chiefs was out there, but man, you had some people in there really supportive of and that was watching what was going on. So sounded really incredible, your guys' response time.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time this evening.
I just want to call out too, I mean, the way you run your station is absolutely outstanding. I mean, your organization, your
Well, thank you.
operation, your culture you've created, off the charts. You guys are just doing a super job.
Well, thank you.
It's awesome too.
Yeah, love the remodel.
We'll be sure to pass that on to our crews.
It
Thank you
shows.
very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Let's take a 5-minute break real quick. Thank you. We're gonna call the meeting back to order, and we'll go over item number 3 here with the water utilities project update, and we have our water utilities director, Ken Matthews, here to present. Ken, thank you for coming out.
Thank you, Mayor Karsbeck, trustees, yep, Savannah. So,
Oh, Savannah here too, thank you.
yeah, Savannah's here, we're gonna tag team this like we did last time. And then, the presentation is really kind of broken into a couple of parts. We're gonna talk a little bit about our capital projects, the design and construction type projects, and then we're gonna roll over and address the water rights, the water portfolio management, the change cases and stuff like that. And normally Pete Johnson's here, and today Bradley Kershaw with Brandish and Reich will be filling in for Pete and will run us through most of that content. So also one other introduction, in the back, sitting there, is our new latest employee in the water team, Alex Tennant. Alex is a watershed science guy, and he'll be our administrator for water resources. So he'll handle all of the water rights and then the engineering side of the the volume and that aspect of our portfolio. So anyway, to start with, so this, we got a little mouse here if you want. Yeah.
I don't have anything exciting to point to in these drawings. So just to remind everyone, last time I was here, I gave a little bit more detailed explanation of these projects, but Phase 1AA is at our wastewater treatment plant. That is temporary improvements so that we can start to collect voluntary incentive program credits or VIP credits.
Is WRF, is that, what is that stand for?
It's water reclamation facility.
Okay, thank you.
So it's very interchangeable with wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you, sorry, I just didn't, okay.
No, it's okay. And so we're gonna be reducing the nutrients removed, or increasing the nutrient removal, or decreasing the nutrients, however you wanna look at it, at the plant, and then that'll give us a credit. We will be able to essentially cash in those credits when the stricter requirements come out on nutrients, buy us more time to meet those limits. So last time I was here, we were testing the single state or single basin operation of the plant. We were able to do that successfully and brought it back online, and we're waiting for equipment to get in. Equipment actually got here last week, and now we're bringing the basin back offline so that way we can clean it and do the installation of the baffles and the minions, which are the large baffle mixers. And Ramey, or REC, our contract operator, will be doing that work. So that'll take a couple weeks per basin. So hopefully we're collecting credits here in June. And then, so the second part of that is Phase 1A, which is the permanent kind of nutrient reduction that we're gonna be putting in. This will be installing a permanent A&A basin, which is the anoxic zone, to get the better nutrient reduction. We are currently reviewing the 60% design submittal, which was done by Burns and Mack with construction, Moltz Construction as the design builder, or the builder on that. So they're also reviewing it, which is nice to have them on board already. We are putting together an early work package, so those are gonna be those long lead items. And we're also onboarding our electrical subcontractor Wayfield, which is very important because all the long lead items are electrical.
Okay.
So to have their input on that is really needed.
Yeah, just also, Moltz, they did the last expansion project at that plant a few years ago. And Wayfield was the electrical contractor for the water plant improvements that was done, and they did a tremendous job. Actually, we had a lot of issues with our control contractor, and Wayfield was able to come in and straighten a lot of that out. So I'm psyched that we have both of those top-notch contractors on board for this project. So when we last met, we were in the process of developing a concept design for what you're looking at here. This is some stormwater improvements the proximity that you're seeing, here's a Highway 287, Berthoud Parkway right here, here's Berthoud Reservoir. The problem is we don't have satisfactory stormwater detention for all the development that was constructed north of 287, so we need to firm up that aspect of it. The other issue is all of that urban stormwater discharges into Berthoud Reservoir right now, which is a water quality problem. Berthoud Reservoir, of course, is one of our raw water sources for a water treatment plant. So the goal of this project is to divert the stormwater off of Berthoud Reservoir, and then also provide the needed detention volume to manage stormwater flows. So we're to the point where we have a feasible concept design. What you're looking at here is kind of it's not a schematic, it's a layout of the proposed construction. It's also establishing required easements. That's important because we need to get out that in front with the developer. You can see here that a lot of this property here is owned by the developer Prairie Star Incorporated. They've indicated a willingness to work with us on this project, and so we've established this as and communicated this to Prairie Star as an indication of we expect dedication of a lot of this property here for easement purposes in order to construct this project. The other partner that we need to get in front of real quick is CDOT. A lot of this property is CDOT. The pond right now that exists is their water quality pond. And so we basically need to either come in and get permission to alter their pond, or, and this will be my approach, and I've indicated to them that we want them to dedicate that to us and basically offload their headache to us so that we can just go in and do what we need to do and fix it. We have a meeting set up with them in a couple of weeks to vet this concept design, and we'll see where it goes. There'll be an IGA for sure that'll be required before the dust settles on this, so you'll definitely be seeing more of this.
So last time I was here, we were in the middle of a project on Fifth and Benson, trying to replace a couple valves. It was a big project. We had to take the school out of water. So we had to coordinate with them, and there's 2 valves we were trying to fix, and because of isolation issues, we were only able to get 1 valve fixed. Because of that, we're taking the distribution rehab funds for this year and focusing on valves. So there's gonna be valves that don't work, have been paved over, or in adding new valves that will just help us isolate more effectively and shut off less water when something does come up. Now, if we're working on something or a break happens in the line, we would like to minimize how many people are gonna be out of water. And so making sure we have valves in strategic locations is really important. And so this is something that I'm actively working on operations with, and hopefully will be a big success. And this will also, we'll be going in, digging up lines, and also getting an idea of what our pipes look like too. So hopefully that'll feed us more information of what needs to be replaced in the coming years and what the state of our lines are like.
So I first started talking about this project in like 2022. This is the main raw water line that feeds the town with our main raw water source from Carter Lake. The primary issue at the time was limited capacity. We have the ability by decree to convey from the Southern Water Supply Pipeline, convey 7 CFS to Berthoud, either to go into a reservoir or to a water treatment plant. And we were only able to convey maybe 4. So we needed to look at a way to improve that capacity of that. The other problem was we were having a series of corrosion problems and some breaks in the line and stuff like that. So over the last couple of years, we've done several things, from here back to the Carter Lake pipeline. That pipeline's in pretty good shape. But the corrosion protection system had been, for the most part, exhausted. It's a 20-year vintage, and those systems only have a finite lifespan. So we went in and reset a new, what are called sacrificial anodes, which are, you put these anodes in the ground and they receive the corrosion as opposed to the pipe. So basically, you're putting a material in the ground to sacrifice itself. From here, downstream towards the town is a much older pipeline. We did some investigation of that. We added some anodes to that line also. We made some repairs. There was a couple of these air relief valves labeled ARV that had issues. And the most recent item, which is what we've been doing over the last 2 or 3 months, is reworking the diversion vaults on the west cell and the east cell at Berkeley Reservoir. That was important in that that was one of the main limiting factors that was limiting our flow to the plant. So we basically reworked those structures and made them into a closed pressurized system with valving so that we can divert flow into the individual cells as needed, and then also enclose the pipeline so that we can convey the full 7 CFS. That work was wrapped up a few weeks ago, and so at this point our decree water will come into priority later this month, and when that hits, we'll be able to move a full 7 CFS. It's going to be screaming down
That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah,
A lot of work.
can't wait.
So this is the Bacon Lake interceptor transmission lines. This one was driven by the overloaded First Street trunk sewer. We needed additional sewer capacity. Yeah, we've been here, we've talked about easements with you guys. Just to orient you, here's Highway 56. Down here, this is the route of the line. We're currently working on final design on that and still collecting easements. Of the 10 easements we need to get, we have 6 of them, and I think we're in pretty good shape for the other 4 as well.
So the yellows are the ones that are still outstanding?
Yes. So getting there, our goal is to go out for bid in June, and I think we're well on our way this year.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yes.
And then we got approval from Larimer County on the 1041 for when we cross into their jurisdiction, and it's been going pretty smoothly.
The state.
Oh, and yeah, and we actually got our state permit too.
Oh, okay. Our county commissioner, John Kafalos, I just saw him in passing. He's like, yeah, Berthoud's coming before us for the 1040. This is what he's talking about.
That was it, yeah.
That was Savannah's project. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so the last one of our capital improvements is we're starting a SCADA master plan. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition, which is just a big way of saying it's the brain behind everything. It tracks the our flows, what valves are open, how the plants are operating, and this stuff ages like all technology. It ages quickly. It's something that's important. It helps us make sure we're being effective, reliable. We have eyes on our system. It helps us if an emergency comes up, responding to it quickly. And there's just a lot to look at. We have a lot of facilities, and everything kind of operates differently. And it's all going to be integrated together and talk to each other. So it takes someone a lot smarter than me to come in to evaluate the whole system. And so we've gone out for proposals on this, and looking forward to bringing someone on board and actually getting this moving forward to then hopefully inform our CIP in the future of what is the plans, what do we need to be spending our money on, making sure we're doing it.
With the SCADA data, you're not necessarily looking at hiring, we're just looking at a contractor to kind of evaluate it.
Yeah, so we're gonna start with the master plan, so this isn't someone to come in and rip everything out and put something new in, it's someone to come in and say, this is working, this isn't working, or if you change this one thing, this will talk to each other better, and to get us on a path going the right direction, because it is a very big, complicated system.
And it's messy, we need we need consistency.
Yeah.
And we don't have it, we got several proprietary systems, different at the wastewater plant and the water plant, and different in the pump stations and at the plants. Yeah, it's a mess.
Some things over radio, some things over cellular, some things are, Wi-Fi, so it's just to make sure that we're consistent, and then we also have redundancy where we need to, and then, start really looking at the cybersecurity at the plants, that's always something you need to consider nowadays.
Okay. So, if there's no specific questions on the capital projects, then we can roll into the water rights side of things, or?
Trustee Ewing?
Go ahead.
Oh, Mayor Pro Tem, either one.
Just had some questions. It was mentioned in here, non-pot systems for Farmstead and Legacy Park. I was also wondering about tie-ins with the Arboretum project. I was just wondering a brief update on that.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, we're really kind of in the infancy stages on the Legacy Park. We got a couple of projects where we're looking at public-private projects with the respective developers, and they're in two different spots. Farmstead is the first. That's quite a bit further along, as you can imagine. They're out there working, putting that yellow or the purple pipe in right now. We're working with the developer now to build a regional pumping facility that would draw water from Bacon Lake, actually. And then that could serve as a regional non-potable system to serve Farmstead, of course, but then also the cemetery, the future town park, the school, and then future subdivisions as they occur. One of the things that I run into is we have very robust water rights, but we don't have a good, effective, and useful way to get it on some of these properties. And then over on the Legacy Park side, that's even more broad. So this deal, and I don't want to talk too much detail on it because it really is just a concept at this phase. But it would be a regional facility funded by the developer that would serve all sorts of stuff. And this would be a similar type setup where we have a pump station, but this one would be located at Loveland Lake. And then a distribution system that then would serve Wagner Farm Park, the Arboretum, possibly Berthoud Elementary, definitely the junior high school, Gateway, Legacy, of course, and then on Point South. So that's got a tremendous amount of potential to be a very robust system and really fully utilize our Loveland Lake as a non-pot resource.
That's great news.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that going through?
I think, Farmstead, they're committed, and Legacy is committed also, but that could go a few different directions. The chances that what I've described here, would come fully to fruition, I'd say it's probably 50% at this point. Chris, are you?
I think
I'm
from
a little more optimistic sometimes.
It's a tough question, but I think.
I am a little more optimistic in that there's significant benefit to us and the developer to do that. It is one of those kind of win-win situations.
It gets all Turner off of our potable system. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and I think, again, depending on where we can connect to Point South, but, our major park facilities, schools, some other subdivisions that have significant open space area. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So, you know, there are a lot of steps to go through to make that a reality, but I think, you know, we're committed to the idea and concept. The development team is working through specifics and engineering with Ken's involvement and support and his team. So I'm probably a little more optimistic. I'd probably say 70%, but,
It's great. I don't
yeah.
want to press the other, it's not the opinion of the board by any means, but I spoke to the school district under public comment when they were essentially divesting from using non-pot at Turner. That was personally a bad move. Now we got that expensive pump out just sitting there, Wagner, with no use. So connecting that back up would free up a lot of potable water for us, and they can use non-potable on the turf.
Yeah. The concept, the Achilles heel of our relationship with the school has been combined facilities, but you have your stuff and we got our stuff. And that just is never gonna work. And so what we're proposing is more like a functional water distribution system, so where we have one master pump, and then instead of turning a pump on to send water to a particular zone, you just turn a valve, and it's much easier, much more foolproof, and just makes a lot of sense. It's cheaper, it's easier to own and operate and maintain, lower energy costs. Yeah.
The school district would probably say, I mean, there's gotta be, they're paying our high water rates for it.
Oh, yeah.
So there's gotta be some interest in them to invest in this to eventually draw down, maybe they'll help chip in.
Yeah, and I think the school district has expressed a willingness to work with us. I think, you know, they would love to see a more functional infrastructure system that doesn't rely on timing and opening valves and ditches and all the stuff that we have now. If they have a system that functions much more like a potable distribution system that's under pressure, their irrigation valves can open and water when they need to. That would be a significant benefit to them and to us. And the beauty of non-pot is, you know, we can keep the town a lot greener, we can maximize our water resources, and we can do that at a fraction of the cost of treated potable water. And so there's a million good reasons to do it, I think.
Awesome.
It just, you know, we got to get through all those technical details to make sure that it all works, that, you know, we've handled all the legalities and all the steps that have to occur. But I'm excited about the opportunity. I think, you know, Ken and his team are. It's going to be a good deal.
No, I would second that. I'm very interested in the possibilities, particularly on the west side of town.
Yeah.
Love to hear more on how things are going and if there's anything we can support.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Just had a quick comment. I just want to thank you guys, even just seeing this data master plan, like that's going to be huge for you guys. The sophistication of the system and all of the new valves and pipelines coming online is huge for Berthoud. And just knowing your resources are going to be more connected and able for you guys to track and improve. I feel like in the last few years, just since having new staff come on, it's been night and day difference for our resources. So I just get really excited every time you guys start talking because it's a huge improvement for the town that most people don't know is going on because it's all behind the scenes. So we have you guys for a few minutes. I just want to thank you. It's a big deal. Thank you.
Well, it doesn't happen often. It's good to hear somebody getting excited. But
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Often I think, thank you. Come off a little negative sometimes, but thank you.
Berthoud is in good hands. That's how I feel.
That's very true.
So I don't know if this is a water rights or capital question, but I was at the Northern Water Symposium today, and they were showing Chimney Hollow and Broomfield has got like more acreage water rights to that than I think the rest of the 14 principals municipalities combined. And then there's Louisville, Superior, Lafayette, I think Boulder's part of it, Lund, Fort Collins. Why did we not get in on that? Do you know?
So we do own Windy Gap Water, but we do not own any of the rights in Chimney Hollow Reservoir because the entity that we bought that Windy Gap Water from wouldn't sell us the storage rights.
So Windy Gap is up there by Lake Granby, right? That reservoir?
It is.
And so we have a piece of that?
We do.
And
so
it
that water
ultimately ends up coming down to Carter? Is that an accurate statement?
It does.
Okay.
It's managed differently than the CBT system, but it is all managed by Northern Water. Windy Gap's great because it's reusable water supply. We've talked a lot about that in the past, and Bradley may touch on that a little bit tonight. But one of the big opportunities for us is to maximize the reuse of the Windy Gap water we do have, because we can store that reuse, we can use it to extinction over and over and over again. but we did not acquire, and I'll be honest, I don't know why the town didn't get in on that project early. That ship had sailed by the time
3,000 people back then, I don't know.
my suspicion is that we
15
were
years ago,
small.
I thought it kind of all that started-ish, I thought.
We were probably small at the time. It was probably a little bit before the big kind of growth boom hit in
Okay.
2016, 2017. I know
Oh, man, I
that,
thought this was a 90s project at least. To build a reservoir goes back decades.
yeah, it was quite some time.
I think the planning and all that started, but I thought they were saying like the municipalities and principals that got involved. Again, I could be wrong, but I thought they said it was around 15 years ago, because I then thought about our current board and thinking nobody was on
It's a great question.
the board.
I'd like to know who they're
And,
talking
and
about.
here's this water source that's in our backyard, and everybody, again, all the folks south of us picked up on it, and we didn't grab any of it, so I just found that was interesting.
And again, that Chimney Hollow will store Windy Gap water. It'll store Windy Gap first use water, which we can't store currently because the town didn't acquire storage rights when they were available.
Right.
We've attempted to acquire storage rights we've been aggressively purchasing Windy Gap water, so we own quite a bit now. And we'll continue to, I think, as it becomes available and as it continues to make sense in our portfolio. If some of those storage rights do come available, we will also aggressively look to purchase some of those first use storage rights as well.
Okay. You had mentioned around Fifth and Third Street, just all those switches you're working on and replacing. And I just wonder, what's the condition of the lines, not just in that area, but really throughout the town? And I'm imagining you do some kind of verification on the quality of the various lines?
Yeah, and we do try to track that. We have our GIS system where when we're out there looking at the lines, we say the conditions. Water lines are harder to look at. They're under pressure. You can't just go and peek your head in a manhole. There's really no way to see it until a break happens. So we track where breaks are. We log all of that. And then a lot of it's just what kind of pipe is it? How old was it? When was the development put in? And we're still gathering that information. And some of it's not a cut and dry thing. It's not like once it's in the ground, we're hoping the plans are right, but then we find out they're slightly adjusted, or plans here say one thing, but the plans here say a different thing, or they overlap or completely different. So it's a constant struggle and it's a battle, and that's what's even when we said we need to start looking at replacing lines and valves, we decided to start with valves because it's gonna also give us an idea of what those lines look like.
Okay. One of the examples they showed today was these old pipes they have. They actually painted the inside of the pipes, which I have no idea how you paint the inside of a pipe. And then they painted the outside, and it's all for corrosion. And the paint will stop the metal from corroding at all. Again, I don't know if you guys look at any of those options, and once something's underground, maybe you don't even have that option. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of metallic pipes in our system. We have a lot of asbestos cement, AC, some of which is perfectly solid and sound, and that doesn't corrode. Other than the asbestos thing, that was a pretty good pipe material back in the day.
Is it hazardous?
So you have to work on it.
Yeah, and there's some Coonies out there with some wood stake pipe out there still.
Wow.
We don't have any of that either.
How about reserves for replacing stuff that needs to be replaced? Do we have reserves?
We have a line item in our budget for programmed rehabilitation and then also emergency type rehabilitation. And then we, on top of that, we keep a healthy reserve in our Fund 21, our water operations fund.
Okay, great. And then this Bacon, where we're doing the easement, I think for sewer lines, did we have to pay all those property owners for their easements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got 6 more we're negotiating with, it sounds like. Okay. Thank you so much. Nice presentation.
Ready, Bradley?
As Bradley's coming up, because we're gonna be talking water rights, I went and double checked. So I said we had a little over $22 million in our source supply account. That's our raw water fund, cash and lieu fees. We actually have $22,644,000, so I was close. But our community development director, Ann Johnson, who's watching electronically, also sent me a message and said we did take in another $1.2 million yesterday from Vantage.
Oh, great.
For their continued building projects there. So we actually have a little more than that now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bradley Kershaw. I'm with Vranish and Reich, covering for Pete Johnson tonight, as Ken noted. I've been with Vranish and Reich for about 2 years now, so I must admit I'm still learning myself all the intricate details of the town's water rights, supplies, distribution system, and all those details. So I will put my Pete hat on tonight and do the best I can to cover his shoes. But learned I was covering for him at about 2 o'clock, so you guys will take it easy on me tonight, that would be appreciated. But excited to give an update on the town's water supplies and more importantly, some updates on the Water Resources Master Plan and what we've been doing to effectuate some of the goals that we identified a few years ago back in 2020. So starting with the water supplies here, we generally view the town's water rights portfolio of consisting of kind of 2 categories of water. The first being native water rights. There's a map here that shows on the south, the blue line there, that's the Little Thompson River Basin and the Little Thompson River. And then on the north, the darker blue is the Big Thompson River. Those 2 drainages source a good amount of the town's native water rights. A lot of what the town has done historically comes from those 2 drainages and is kind of condensed into that geographical area there. An overview of some of those native rights. Berthoud's Decree water is a very important source that accounts for over 2,000 acre feet a year. The town's continuing to acquire handy ditch company shares. Over the past year, there's been at least 2-3 shares that have been acquired, I think. So that 42.43 number continues to go up there slow and steady. Ryan Gulch Reservoir, 34 shares is the current ownership. The Ryan Gulch water, recall, is the water that is in the pending change case with the water court. So I will have an update on that case here shortly. And then a slew of other native water rights here. I won't go through all those bullets at the bottom, but these generally are the types of water rights that the town seeks to plug into the non-potable irrigation systems and continue using those either for irrigation within the town or for continued agricultural irrigation on some of the farms and open space acquisitions that have been completed recently.
Could you just say where the Decree water comes from?
I believe that's from the Big Thompson.
It is.
Okay.
It comes to us via Carter Lake, but it's diverted out of the Big Thompson.
Okay.
And the water right itself is a Big Thompson water right.
The next classification, besides the native supplies, are the northern supplies. I could spend 2 hours going through this map and give us all a migraine of how northern is complicated and how they do their thing, but it's safe to say that the northern supplies generally come over from the west slope. Lake Granby is on right here, just tucked to the west of that orange line there. They have various collection and conveyance infrastructure right around Lake Granby there at Windy Gap Reservoir. Those systems and conveyances pump the water back east to the Front Range through Estes and then down to Carter Lake for delivery to the town. And currently the town's northern portfolio consists of 1,088 CBT Colorado Big Thompson units. The yield of a CBT unit is a little bit in flux. Northern has some discretion there to set an acre foot amount of water year by year. But the town code recognizes that at 0.6 acre foot per unit. So that equals 652.8 acre feet a year. That town code number is a little bit conservative, but it's obviously based on historical practice and it's in light of many years of data from what Northern has done with their quota, they call it, where they set a specific number of acre foot amount per unit.
Which they did today at the confluence.
Yep.
Or recommend.
Recommended,
It's a
yeah.
recommendation.
The recommendation there would be 0.8. So some years it's 0.5, some years it's 0.8, often it's 0.7. So that shed some light on the 0.6 number here in the town code, and I think a safe but still historically representative number for the CBT yield per unit.
Do the
And-
quotas affect these volumes at all?
The quota would affect the amount of water that Berthoud can receive from its Windy Gap unit, but I don't think it affects how the town plans, for development purposes and town code and forward-looking. I think they use that 0.6 acre foot number.
Okay, thank you.
For Windy Gap, currently the town owns 10 units, I believe that's accurate. The yield is a little bit harder there because it depends on different firming arrangements. So the Windy Gap came up earlier. The Chimney Hollow is part of the Windy Gap firming project, and at a high level, firming a water right is essentially making space available for the water to go when the water is available. You're essentially timing the demand plus availability. Say you have water that can come into the system, but it doesn't have anywhere to go, then you can't really use it. So the firming aspect there mostly relates to establishing and creating kind of storage buckets. So that's Chimney Hollow as a firming operation for Windy Gap. So about 100 acre feet a unit is a conservative number here that equals about 1,000 acre feet of Windy Gap water. And the northern supplies are delivered through the Carter Lake pipeline, as Ken noted. So generally with the town supplies here, you have the native supplies and you have the northern supplies. Those again can be divided into two categories of rights that can be used within the town's potable system. That essentially is the water rights that can be delivered to the water treatment plant and delivered through the town's potable system to individual taps. And then non-potable irrigation, whether that's through non-potable irrigation systems that we'll touch on later and that have already been discussed, or continued irrigation of farms through ditches and those things that run through different properties that would also be classified as a non-potable irrigation use. So most of the updates tonight deal with Berthoud's Water Resources Master Plan. The town's engineering consultants, Leonard Rice, they're currently preparing a 2025 update. That 2023 there is a typo. That should be 2025 update of the 2020 Water Resources Master Plan. They are deep in the work there, running different model inputs and analysis, reviewing data and moving that process forward. So we are hopeful to have the updated plan near completion at some point later this year. We will certainly keep you posted as that continues to develop, but lots to look forward to in consultation with LRE and the work that they're doing there. So my focus tonight will be on the goals that we identified in our 2020 master plan, the recommendations that were identified in that plan, and what the town and Greenwich and Reich has been doing to help facilitate and effectuate those various goals. So at a high level, those can be classified into developing reusable water supplies and the town's reuse plan. Chris noted the obvious value of a reusable water right as opposed to a first use only water right is that you can use it, you can capture it, you can track it and quantify it and use it again and again until it's gone. So really huge value on the reusable supplies and continued development of mechanisms for the town to be able to continue to expand the reusable supplies that it has and how it can continue reusing the supplies that are already reusable. Next, developing and evaluating non-potable irrigation systems. Obviously, that's been discussed in some detail already. And then reevaluating the town's water rights were some of the big goals in the 2020 plan that I'm excited to share some updates on here. So first and foremost, the master plan identified a goal, again, of developing reusable water supplies. the project there that we've been working on deals with windy gap units and firming those. So just as Northern is firming its own windy gap project, we've been helping the town firm the ability to reuse the windy gap water, which is reusable. It's the same type of implementation on a smaller scale. It's identifying storage sites where you can time water, that you can put reusable water that you'd otherwise have to release back to the stream to other users, even though you technically have a legal right to capture that and keep using it. So having the storage bucket or the other place to put the water, but mostly comes in the form of a storage bucket, is key to firming the town's reusable windy gap water. So we have a pending case in the water court, 22 CW 3206. I'll touch on that here in a few slides, but this case claims storage rights in a number of reservoirs on the South Platte River. Those would be used as firming sites for the windy gap water, essentially reusable water that's discharged from the water treatment plant can be exchanged, as a legal term, into those storage buckets, essentially 1-to-1. If the town lets 5 CFS of reusable water out of the water treatment plant, and they have the right to take a like amount into the storage bucket, that's called an exchange. There's a number of different exchange concepts, but that's one example of how you can move water around the system here and kind of firm the reusable supplies there. So Dry Creek Reservoir is one that is a little more local. Understand that we're having continued collaboration with Little Thompson Water District about securing capacity in Dry Creek Reservoir. And then Chimney Hollow, there's obviously a lot of moving pieces there. I know that they plan to start moving some water into Chimney Hollow later this year. That is the windy gap firming water. But I know that we are interested in kind of the longer term development of the reservoir, how it's used, and if there's potential for an opportunity to move other water sources into the reservoir and work around the timing of when those northern supplies come in to use it as another storage bucket for these supplies. Still on the goal here of developing reusable supplies, changes of water rights are another avenue to secure reusable water right. When you change a water right, you, on one hand, limit it. You're limited to its historic consumptive use, which is a legal term for how much consumption the water right has essentially used. So you have to go to the water court and you essentially take a haircut on the amount that you can use because you're limited to the consumed amount rather than the amount diverted. But then the flip side of that is that historically consumed amount is fully reusable, and you can continue to reuse that in the same way that windy gap water is fully reusable. So change cases are going to be a big part of the strategy both now and into the future. As I noted, the growing handy ditch portfolio, we are currently in the middle of the approval process with the handy ditch company. Most ditch companies, if not every ditch company in the state, has a bylaw requirement that before an applicant can go change shares in the ditch, you need approval from the company. So we're working through that approval process with the handy ditch company now. Once that's done, we can go to the water court and formally apply for the change. So LRE is doing a lot of analysis there, both with the ditch company, but it'll also be helpful when the water court case is filed. The goal is sometime this year, so we will keep everyone posted there, but the goal is certainly to get that one done and filed in 2025, and then we'll have some more certainty on the horizon to the extent that the water court can be certain. The Ryan Gulch shares, that's the town's pending change case now. I'm happy to report that we are nearly complete there. I think there were originally 12 opposers in this case, and we are down to 1 now. So we are at the goal line and just need to punch this one in. The remaining opposer is the Handy Ditch Company. They have not identified any big concerns. There's just different moving pieces and different projects that all kind of get blended together with the Handy Ditch Company. So they're trying to kind of piece all those together before they take their spatula out of this pie. And then recent development here, Long Lake water right. This is kind of an interesting one historically, located up around Estes. So we are very early in this process in the due diligence phase. We have a long due diligence period to make sure that that this water right ultimately can be usable for the town and that we have somewhere to put it. We are excited to see what comes out of this one. It certainly could be very promising, and if it doesn't turn out to work, then the town doesn't really have any obligations up front. So I think that one has a lot of upside with not a whole lot of downside. So that's one that we will continue to have updates on here over the next few months. Still on the master plan goal of developing reusable supplies, and this ties the South Platte water supply project in. I mentioned the kind of the exchange concept and how the town would exchange the reusable Windy Gap water. The 223206 case also claims augmentation uses and recharge uses, which are other avenues for the town to secure reusable water rights and continue to develop a portfolio. I know that Leonard Rice did a lot of analysis about where to look for the next slew of water. They did an analysis and concluded that the town needed more water to meet long-term planning commitments and long-term planning horizons. And they looked geographically to the Big Thompson and Little Thompson, and they just couldn't make it work with the amount of water that was available, where the water would be available, and the times that it would be available. So that's kind of what we're getting generally all up and down the Front Range now, is water users that are going a little further out to get more beneficial conditions for when they could be able to divert water, how often, and how much they can get. So by going a little further out, the South Platte's obviously going to be kind of a new venture and a new source for the town, but there are some upsides there. Even though it's a little geographically further, there's better numbers on water availability and year-by-year outlook there. My understanding was that it was considerably better than any option on the Big Thompson or Little Thompson. On South Platte still, Leonard Rice is engaged here, as are we, with continued engineering analysis and planning meetings with both internally and then with the raw water provider that we'd be working with in collaboration on this project. Next, on developing and evaluating non-potable irrigation systems. This one has obviously been talked about a little bit tonight already. The town completed its non-potable master plan earlier this year, which really gives us a framework to help guide these various discussions with developers and potential projects, as far as consistency and just having guideposts for what the town's going to look for engineering guidelines and other development of these systems. Continued negotiation of a carriage agreement with Loveland Lake. The concept there, and Ken, you might be able to speak more in detail here, is essentially for Loveland Lake to kind of act as a forebay for holding non-potable supplies that can be brought into the town and distributed to these non-potable irrigation systems. And obviously the huge benefit there is you don't have to go to water court to change the water right, which saves a lot of time, money, and kind of contentious negotiations with neighbors. And then you can continue using it consistent with its historical use, which is beneficial.
Right, and that, in addition, we're looking at ways that we can firm the probability of Loveland Lake being filled timely and consistently. Right now, the priority is what it is, but it can get conflicted, and it could come into priority, and then Handy would opt not to fill it, due to other constraints. And so we're trying to renegotiate this carriage agreement so that, when it comes into priority, it gets filled. We'll look to also, tie that to a capital project where we're increasing the capacity of the pipes that fill Loveland Lake. Right now, they're limited to 50 CFS at the most. We could put a lot more water through Handy Ditch. So we could, 150 CFS, if we could get that to Loveland Lake, we could easily convey that down Handy, and that could also firm the ability to fill the lake. So, yeah.
And before we close on that non-potable irrigation, would just reiterate that having the master plan done is important for us as we continue to evaluate these proposals, which is underway now, as has been discussed just a bit ago. So, good way for the town to have a master document to look to for guidelines and consistency. Finally, master plan goal of reevaluating water rights. This is another one where the town's engineering consultants, LRE, is doing a lot of work. They're doing what they call a supply and demand snapshot, where they gather data and look at, what's coming in, what are the supplies, what are the commitments, making sure that the assumptions in the town code and the town's planning documents make sense in light of actual on-the-ground data. So they started that within the last few years, and that's a twice-a-year occurrence now. So their review is ongoing and active. It's possible that we will have some recommendations here as far as water rates potentially this year. Pete told me to stress that it's not for sure that we might have updates or not. So if we do, I think the goal would be before the end of this year, but it's possible that we might just say, we've done the analysis and looked at all the data and continue to, keep the head down as is for now. So if there is recommendations, those will come this year.
So the kind of the last thing on my list, and before I jump into that is, do we have any questions for Bradley concerning water rights? Maybe let's do those before I talk about this alliance group.
I'll open it up to the public too. Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Wing, and then after that, because I did promise we'd open it up.
You want me to go?
Yeah, please.
So a whole bunch of the slides talked about the reusable supply. Could you technically say what that is, or let me take a quick shot at it, what I think it is, and then you can say, no, you're in left field. So it sounded like if we're able to take water, Windy Gap, which sounded like was reusable, if that goes through our water treatment system, and then however we meter it on how many gallons or whatever the acre feet that is, then we get to reuse that. Could you elaborate? Is there another kind of reusable? Just, we had a lot of discussion on that, and we never actually defined technically how reusable works.
Sure. It's a great question. At a high level, you can have different categories of reusable rights. Windy Gap is reusable because it's pumped from the west slope. So when you're importing a water right into a new basin, Trans Mountain water, that water didn't originate in the South Platte drainage. So Colorado water law essentially rewards importing a water into a new drainage basin as reusable.
So again, so we have this water, we use it for our residents, and then what? We get to use it again? I just not.
Yeah, so I think what you're
my head can't wrap around what that even means.
What I can tell you what we're not proposing is we're not proposing to catch it at the wastewater plant discharge and pump it to the water plant. The reuse is an indirect, it's a transfer. So probably the best example that we have is this change case that Bradley was talking about down on the South Platte. Is our water would discharge out of the treatment plant, but we have these storage rights. If we get this change case approved, or when we get this change case approved, we'd have these storage rights down on the South Platte. And we can store water in that reservoir. And when we release, 5 million gallons out of the wastewater plant, we can pump 5 million gallons out of that reservoir back to town and treat and use that water.
The Little Thompson, Big Thompson come together, and it sounds like that starts the South Platte. So that's a ways away, right? So you're saying we either have, or we could have, or we're looking at having some type of bucket there, and then we would pump that back?
Yeah, 5-6 miles, yeah.
And then that is where the sort of the definition of reusable
Mhm.
comes in?
Mm-hmm. That's one alternative.
And then we could do it again?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and the easy way to think about it is all the water that goes through the wastewater treatment plant goes back into the river, right? After it's treated, then there's, the solids are separated out.
What river does it go into?
The Little Thompson River.
Okay.
So we discharge from our wastewater treatment plant into the Little Thompson River. Water supplies that are not native to the Little Thompson River or to basins downstream can then be taken out of the river. And it doesn't mean necessarily directly, like Ken said, we're not taking it from the outlet of the wastewater treatment plant, pumping it back up. It can be done a variety of different ways. It can either be done through wells that are drilled adjacent to the river, you take groundwater out. It could be done through exchanges where you take water out of the river and you just, and you basically replace it in the river with that effluent.
Would we ever pull from Carter? Would that be an exchange? Hey, we sent 1 million gallons out, so we get another million more? That's not how it works?
No.
Okay.
And so the goal is to use your reusable supplies in the wintertime so that the vast majority of that water goes through the wastewater treatment plant, right? In the wintertime, about, 90-95% of the water that goes out of our water treatment plant ends up back in the wastewater treatment plant because it's all used inside. In the summertime, that number's significantly less. I don't know what, 60% maybe?
Or less.
Or less. So in the summertime, whatever water comes out of the water treatment plant, about half, let's just say for easy round numbers, goes onto grass. It doesn't end up back in the wastewater treatment plant, and it doesn't end up back in the river. So we want to use our reusable supplies in the winter so we can maximize how much we can pull back out. And again, there's a variety of different ways to do that.
Perhaps I'm a little slower than most. Maybe in the future you could actually illustrate it in a flow and literally show us it comes from here, it goes here, it ends up here, and then we get to reuse it from here.
Mm-hmm.
That for me, that would just be, then it's real. I'm actually looking at
Yeah.
what's happening, because it sounds like it's a big deal.
Yeah.
That'd be very nice.
Yeah, no, that, we could absolutely do that. We'd illustrate it for a particular scenario of which we're reviewing several. But yeah, and to give you a flavor, so to speak, of what we're talking about.
And then when we buy these shares, these rights, Colorado, Big Thompson, CVT, is that water then free to us, or do we have to pay something
pay
annually?
Northern an assessment annually, and it's.
And is that for the
it's free.
facilitation of sort of getting it to us?
That's right, and it's
Okay.
your lunch today.
Okay. Exactly.
Nice building out there too.
Yes.
I went to a water symposium last week in Greeley, and I ended up talking to one of the guys afterwards for quite a while, but I don't know what other word to use, but they said they've discovered a massive aquifer up north of Greeley, and they actually found another one, even bigger, beneath that one. So would we have an opportunity to get involved in anything like that? And I asked the question actually earlier, not today, about the Ogallala aquifer. Do we have anything like that in Colorado? And at that point, I was told no. And then I'm talking to this guy who it's his business to do that, and they've now come across these pretty massive aquifers.
Yeah.
I think at a high level, groundwater is an interesting resource. I would note most groundwater in Colorado is tributary, which means it is connected to the stream as a matter of hydrology. So if you pump the groundwater, you deplete, say if you're in Greeley, you're causing depletions to the South Platte, which then it gets tagged essentially not any different than going to the South Platte and getting a water right. the way that that's administered. If anything, it's more complicated because the depletions are lagged out, they call it, over a period of time. So most groundwater in Colorado is tributary. It's legally presumed to be tributary. So in that way, at a high level, I wouldn't see a ton of benefit of chasing those sources other than what the town's already doing on the South Platte.
The other thing they said, they talked quite a bit about, was Aurora coming up into our geographic area and taking our water, and Denver taking our water, and there was another big town.
Thornton.
What? Thornton, yeah. And they were talking about, you know, the deep pockets they have to buy when these farmlands come up and all their water's available, and these guys with deep pockets are buying all of our water that's in our geographic area.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the financial resources. So they were talking about, you know, the Longmonts of the world and the Fort Collins and the Lovelands getting together and pooling so that we don't let our northeastern water go to these big metropolitan towns. Is Berthoud involved in any of that?
Yeah, that's the next slide.
Then I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, and I'll just close out by,
Some questions from you.
I just had some quick questions. One, could we get the non-pot plan posted on the website? The next thing, in the 2025 master plan, will that feature similar kind of scenarios of kind of climate plans and use plans to what we saw before?
Very formatted, very similar.
Okay.
And the snapshots that you've been getting twice a year, it'll fall in line. The idea is we continue to build off the similar technology.
Perfect. Last one, you brought up Long Lake, and I was interested in those rates. I was unaware that we had rates up there. What are the difficulties of access? Is it just the fact that it's in the park and wilderness designation?
yes, and I haven't been super in the weeds on this transaction. Andrea at our office has taken the lead on this. Long Lake is an interesting water right in that it was a storage facility way back in like the 1920s, and then the dam breached and flooded out, caused a bunch of damage. And then there was a long period of non-use of the water right, which raises concerns of abandonment. It's been listed, I believe, on the division engineer's abandonment list a few times over the past decades. It's always been successfully taken off that list. A water right owner can object and bring the state evidence of actions that they've done to preserve the water right, even if it's not diverting it and actually using it. So the water right owners have always been successful in preserving the water right and having it not abandoned by the state. But those are the concerns we have a very long due diligence process under that contract because we want to obviously prod all those details and make sure that any right that the town would be acquiring is going to be feasible and that it's going to yield wet water that we can make beneficial use of.
Because I imagine they haven't been in use since the flood, which happened, 40 years ago or so?
1982, I think, was the flood.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it has, but there's been some litigation as far as like the damages from the flood, and I know that the states look to that and actions by those claimants. I believe that like the claimants from the flood actually ended up getting the water right, and then that's how it was conveyed. Chris, I don't know if you have more detail there, but
that's basically it. It was listed on the abandonment list in 2000 and 2020, and both times it was successfully removed. The attorneys representing the claimants made arguments that they had been attempting to sell the water right. There's a whole long list of issues. The federal government, I think, condemned the rights of way and the storage location up in Rocky Mountain National Park, and but the water right did not go away. So it's essentially a very low risk option for the town right now because the current owner of that water right is funding the majority of the due diligence and will fund any water court actions that are necessary. And then if we're able to identify usable supply, then we'll issue water credits to that owner. And so it won't even be direct cash outlay. And it could be anywhere from 0 to hundreds of acre feet. once we get through that process.
Very interesting, thank
Yeah.
you.
Trustee Ayers?
Yeah, so you said earlier you were talking about changing use from potable to municipal water, and I think the phrase used was you have to take a haircut based on the traditional amount. What is the time frame for the designation of traditional amount? And the reason I ask that is because as the town is growing, for that kind of haircut, I would be concerned that the traditional amount is much lower than recent amount. Does that question make sense?
It does. So when you change a water right, you're going essentially, we'll take the Handy Ditch or the Ryan Gulch water, that's decreed for irrigation, has historically been used for irrigation. So the town can use that in a non-potable system. They can continue to irrigate with it under the same decreed right, no need to go to water court. But if they want to use that for potable uses, if they want to, tie that in to the water treatment plant and have it distributed through the town for potable use, that's where you have to go to the water court and claim a change of use from irrigation to municipal. And that's where they do the historic consumptive use analysis. That really is very case dependent. Some of the ditch systems have change cases. Handy has prior change cases in Ryan Gulch that we're working through. So that is beneficial as you kind of have a guidepost to work off, and you can model your case off the one that has been done previously. So that does help eliminate some of the engineering uncertainties as far as what the amounts are going to look like. And I guess I would caution too, it's a literal reduction, but the whole purpose of it is that the right that you're getting out of the change case is consistent with what the original right actually consumed. So the water that goes to irrigation that's not consumed goes back to the stream as return flows. So that's the purpose of the change case, is to really focus on the amount that was consumed over a historically representative period of time, and the time period can be different in every case. And as the applicant, we would have control to propose an applicant-friendly kind of study period there, as long as we had a historically representative time frame. But would note generally that, again, it's with Handy especially, there's been a lot of Handy change cases, so those engineering data points are well established now, and we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel and taking on additional uncertainty in that respect. Sure.
Other questions? All right, you want to turn it over to Skeeta?
So one last thing before we jump to SCADA.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem, remind me, is there anyone in the public that wishes to ask a question while we have our attorney up front here? Okay, thank you, sorry. Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Matthews.
For the last several years, I've been participating in this Northern Colorado Water Alliance. This is a group of water leaders throughout Northern Colorado, and it does include Loveland and Greeley and Fort Collins, and then a lot of other smaller communities and some water districts. And so the purpose of which was, kind of get together and collaborate. We would share, stories on how we're, approaching problems and stuff like that. The dialogue, though, we were hunting for a bigger purpose. And the bigger purpose centered around just exactly what you were talking about, Trustee Wing, and that's securing the water in Northern Colorado. And how can we do this? This is a nut that's been tried to be cracked for quite a while, and we're not the first to approach this. It's a long process, and it culminated to when we started in 2024. There was alliance as to, okay, we have all these other things. We have a public message that we want to convey. We want a consistent message to convey to the public, and there's all these things, but we want to try to develop something that will help secure our water. So we headed off in 2024 to do that. We basically finished the year with an agreement on that in really a pretty broad concept. We had some issues with that resolution. The resolution basically said that the Alliance members support efforts to protect the quality and the quantity of water in the region, retaining the water for local beneficial use, and opposing. So that was real important. We wanted to go on record to say we oppose further transfer of water to entities outside of our region. And then we even said specifically the Denver metro area. Several of the rural water districts hadn't mentioned it before, but they came online this most recent meeting with objections to mostly to the concept of opposition. The concerns were, and these were concerns brought to them by their board, this sounds like a new government agency. We don't need any new government agency. This sounds like a taxing agency. We don't need any new taxes. This sounds like something that could penalize us similar in nature to the 1041 process, which originally started as a process that was supposed to help local governments and agencies of the nature. So that was a problem. It didn't derail us completely. We though are at a point now where we need to try to figure out a plan forward with or without these districts. They're the kind of the local South Fort Collins or Fort Collins Loveland Water District, East Larimer County, North Weld. Those are the and then trying to think of whether there's any other water districts that would be in the alliance. I think if they decided to leave, then it would just be municipalities in the team. Northern is a big player in this organization. A lot of leadership, a lot of guidance, and so it's fortunate that we have them engaged in that. And we'll see where it goes. And I think what I would like to propose to this team is that I would like for it, as it moves forward, to move forward more quickly. And I'd like to commit to you guys that, in maybe a quarter, I'm back here with another, and hopefully a positive update, and some actual language that you guys can read and look and say, yes, we can sign this, or no, we're going in the wrong direction. Or else I need to reconsider, or Chris and I need to talk about whether I need to continue to invest time in it, because it is a time investment, but these things do take a lot of work.
So coming out of the symposium, they said how critical this is, and every essentially gallon of water that goes somewhere else is money that's coming out of this region's pockets because of residential development, commercial development. And I think Thornton bought 21,000 acres, right, of farmland north of Greeley.
Yeah, and in and around Fort Collins. That's where the majority of that occurs.
That's a massive chunk of property,
Yeah.
right? So I'd love to hear the quarterly updates, and I based on everything I've heard, it's a critical issue for our area.
Yeah, I would agree. I would hate to have somebody come in and all of a sudden we're bidding against Aurora for, the handy ditch, share.
We're bidding against Loveland, even worse, right? That's where we should collaborate.
All right.
Some thoughts too. Initially, when you see these regional, entities come together, you realize there's some competition there. But whenever I speak to like business owners or people in our community, the most wise way to proceed is to work together and share resources.
Yeah.
And so even with your competitors, when we can work together, share resources, share ideas, I feel like everybody wins.
Yeah.
And then when you have some type of outside issue, you have a greater bandwidth to defend against that too.
Right.
And so I do appreciate having some connectivity to our regional partners so that we can find and identify maybe some like-minded goals
Sure.
and objectives so that we can move forward together and help one another out, and then you just build greater
Yeah.
friendships and relationships through that too. So this is a great
Yeah.
thing to investigate.
It is, and it's, so locally, we have, we're doing a lot of active work with Loveland and Johnstown and Little Thompson Water District, and we're meeting and cooperating with them on current issues and programs. This is even more broad and brings more, and the idea is it brings more horsepower. And so, you know, I'm still positive. It's just all of these things, you know, you get 30 people, you got 30 ideas, and so, yeah, try to work that out. Who I feel sorry for, there's a professional facilitator. Man, you know, like, there's somebody that needs a beer at the end of one of those, or two.
There's gonna be massive growth, I think, all around the airport, right? That's just gonna keep, that area is gonna just keep exploding.
Mm-hmm.
That's close enough geographically to us where, you know, you could see they would want to tap into those resources.
Right, they, the change, or the hostile takeover or whatever that was referred to in the conference today it was in the vicinity of Windsor. Aurora came in and outbid Windsor for these water rights and took them back to Aurora with them.
Any other questions? Very thorough, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll open up to the audience. Yes, if you could come in front, state your name and address.
So Kate Broughton, 748 Mountain Avenue. And so you have incredible data and information and you're doing huge work. And then Barnes and Reich have huge amounts of data and information. Have you considered having a data lake? So Databricks, have a company in California, they create data lakes. So each disparate company group can pour in your data. It could be literally a flash drive or a floppy or anything, but they can pour it into the data lake, and then you can actually have governance amongst different companies rather than just because you're doing cybersecurity. And so I wonder if a data lake would be really useful so that more people can participate in putting in information, and then when you're looking at information, it's not separate, isolated copies.
It sounds good. I mean, this alliance, we have a you know, repository, I guess, for just what you're talking about. And yeah, so I'm interested. Tell me the name again.
Databricks.
Databricks. Okay. Databricks. That's something, you know, somebody's always reinventing that wheel, and it's more than just file sharing, and it's can be advanced, and yeah, so.
Well, JP Morgan used them, so it's they used it.
Okay.
A lot of big information stuff.
They need to change the name to Data Reservoir.
Thank you. Okay, bring it back to Director Matthews.
All right, are we ready for that? So I think that's it for this item. I don't need an action from this. This was informational only.
Very helpful.
Yeah. And so are we ready to move on to the SCADA master plan?
Can I actually, I didn't get to make a comment on the last slide. Just real quick, I just want to emphasize the importance of our firming projects, because there's so many new projects coming online, the non-potable, that stuff like that, but until we can firm resources we already have, I feel like we're kind of behind. And so I just personally want to emphasize that how critical that is and how great plan that we're really vesting out those options.
Good, very good. And we are too. A foot solid on that gas pedal on that one. But it's along the water core process is brutally long. No. Worse than the facilitator for the group meeting. So the SCADA master plan, Savannah talked about it earlier. I don't know if you have any specific questions on that. She talked about our process. We put an RFP out to several firms. We got 2 responses. ACE is our recommended firm that we'd like to award it to. This is a specialty of theirs. The other firm that we received a proposal from was Tetra Tech, the firm that did our water wastewater master plan, for example, and they're our program manager for our wastewater plant improvements that Savannah was talking about. They were a little more expensive, and while they have very good skills, this is ACE's bailiwick. This is what they do. They got integrators on board that do the programming, and so this is, and they do it for other industries other than just water. Actually, water may be one of their secondary, to industrial control systems. As Savannah mentioned, it is a service contract, no materials, no installation. It's to assess our system and then provide recommendations for protocols and standards and then projects and that we would do to bring our SCADA system up to date. So if we don't have any other further questions on that, I would like to, recommend that the proposal be approved by the board and authorize Chris to sign that on behalf of the town.
Excellent. Any questions for the trustees on this? Okay, would anyone like to move on this?
I'll move to approve the selection of Applied Controls and Engineering to develop the SCADA master plan for the town of Berthoud. Authorize the town administrator to execute consulting services and authorize staff to proceed with implementation, planning, and funding prioritization based on the recommendations outlined in the plan.
Second?
Second, go ahead.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Wing has, Mayor Pro Tem.
We know what you
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy has speak on this. Trustee Harris has seconded. Clerk, give me a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Albrecht,
Yes.
Trustee Wing,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy,
Yes.
Trustee Ayers,
Yes.
Trustee Hardy,
Yes.
Mayor Karspeck.
Yes. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
A lot good going on. All right, let's move on to reports here, and we'll start off with Trustee Wing.
There was a lot of discussion around the gates again at Huron Lakes, and whoever you're talking to has their version of it, and then you talk to the person they said they talked to, and the version changes.
I think
And
the
I
Minister
just-
Kirk's got a good update on.
I was just gonna ask if you could just do that.
You're right. Everyone has their own version of what's going on. The version that's occurring between the town and the district, I think is pretty clear. There's an existing agreement between the town and the district that allows for the construction of a gatehouse. There is a requirement in there for the town board to adopt a resolution authorizing the operation of that gatehouse. We're working through the specifics with the district about how that will occur and how that documentation will look.
As I understand it, it was kind of late on us to push that,
Yeah.
but now we're just.
It's kind of an interesting one. So we were going back and forth on some documentation with them last year. It kind of died on our side, and they never brought it up again. And to be honest, it's not a high priority for us to put in gates in their subdivision. So I hadn't thought about it, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, both sides just thought they owned it.
Everybody
They,
thought-
they
yeah.
thought the other
I
side
feel
owned
bad
it.
because I was telling people that, yeah, it's not on it. Okay, anyway.
So anyway, I just wanted to see, I just want to get it from the horse's mouth.
We are working on it. I think we have documentation ready for you to consider, but we need their input first before we bring that to you.
And just a clarification on process, because I'm a little gray sometimes. Sometimes we'll have the citizens, by the way, the fact that we put the citizen participation really up front in our agenda, I think is fantastic. Because I think citizens are the priority, so I think that's great that we do that. Not everyone does that. But sometimes we'll have dialogue, sometimes we'll answer their questions, sometimes we say absolutely not. I like the fact that we engage with them, and we could limit ourselves even time-wise But they're asking questions, a lot of times we know the answer, or there is a good dialogue. But again, I sort of almost thought the process was no answers to the questions, just state your thing. So just some clarification on that.
Well, this is obviously not up to me. This is how I've been doing it. If you want to change anything, if it's anything with a public hearing, I think the new thing with land use is just wait till the public hearing comes up. So a proposed development
Sure.
that's gonna be talked under. If it's, like this is Wilson's questions, sometimes they want to ask multiple questions, so I just want to get it out of the way, make sure that's under 3 minutes, and then I'll turn it over to Administrator Kirk versus me or any one of us. I think he's kind of be a more official, I guess it depends on the
So we
question.
could weigh in then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And-
I just wasn't sure on that.
And some, yeah, see, and other times, I guess it might just get out of control and there is a back and forth and there probably shouldn't be, but.
You shut it down, yeah.
Well, I think historically, we've had board meetings where that went out of control
Hmm.
and where trustees were having a lot of input to questions. And so I appreciate the mayor's approach that he, limits that to staff usually answers or himself. And I guess if we were to speak, having us limit it to is helpful for the procedure. But I think a lot of that stems from past board meetings that went
Okay.
sideways because
Everyone
a
had
lot
an
of
individual
dialogue.
opinion on very controversial issues. yeah.
Exactly.
Okay,
So it helps
okay.
us kind of keep.
Just the clarification really helps so thank you for
Yeah.
that. That's great feedback on.
And why I'm like opening it up kind of random, like I try to, it used to be not a policy, but a good practice that anything we talk about, we open up to public comment. Sometimes I forget, or if it says a presentation to the board, but that's why even on these things like here, I promise in the beginning, I'll open it up and then I forget to do it and I feel bad, so.
Okay.
But I think it's just a good policy, and
Yep.
one-off questions can get answered.
So even the gentleman sitting out there today talked about the growth and loving Bertha the way it is and blah, blah, blah. And I was able a month or two ago to sit down with Ann Johnson and actually was surprised at the end of our conversation. She showed me the map and she showed me all the areas that are already committed to. It doesn't mean they're developed now, but they're zoned for it and the developer has it and it's gonna be built on. And quite frankly, there's not a lot left, a lot being a relative term. But whether it's us seeing that or being presented, or so that when a resident asks that question, we could say, well, we're about done. There's these neighborhoods they've been committed to, they're gonna happen. So it's not like we've already approved them. But I think that's an enigma. I don't, again, I'm the newest one on the board, but I didn't realize how much has been committed to and how little is left. And it might be a nice dialogue for having.
The number of building permits issued too, because that's dropped significantly in the last couple of years.
Yeah,
I think, well, and that's gonna go back.
but it's such a hot topic, right? It's probably the number one thing that's brought
I
up, the
think
growth of
ultimately
Bertha.
this is an education thing, and the other part of this is that, do we want these? Some of these, I'm a little concerned, but that was made by prior boards to annex these lands, so that's out of our hands. That's the other thing of, why are we still growing at this rate? And it's kind of, that was made 20 years ago.
Exactly. That's and it's, I think a lot of people, because they see these developments going up and they think, hey, this is infinite, it's just gonna, and the fact of the matter is, that's really not the case. So I think it'd be good for us all to be educated and then we could respond or reply to some
Yeah,
of those.
sorry, when I say education, I meant public education. That might come down, on me too. I talked to, when we did the brand assessment, I got a little bit of feedback from the guy interviewing, and the opinion of the board to him didn't be very good, and a lot of it was on growth. And he said, you guys just have a massive opportunity to get out there and speak on open space and the other things you're doing on, because the view of the board, apparently, in some of those groups, is not very hot.
And then just this week, went to a couple water symposiums and first of all, thanks for the town for supporting that. And it was incredibly informative. So just would
That's awesome.
recommend, if you guys have opportunities to visit some of that, it's just, there's very few subjects probably more important to us than water. It seems to touch almost everything these days. So it's really nice to be informed and hear what everybody else is going through. So
Thank you for attending.
thank you. Yeah.
Trustee Hart?
Nothing to report.
All right, Trustee Ayers?
The port committee had a lengthy discussion last week about the pool design. I can answer specific questions if you have them. Otherwise, I was going to wait until that discussion came in front of us next time. Is that correct? 2 weeks, or
So we're gonna make some adjustments to the concepts based on the port meeting. It'll either be at your next meeting or maybe the meeting after probably. But it will be in front of you soon, so we can go through all the specifics. but.
Yeah. So unless you guys have specific questions for me, I'm just gonna hold off.
Yeah, that's great. How long, lengthy is it, several hours?
It was about 2 hours on just that issue.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Trustee Albright.
I'm trying to remember what I was gonna bring up.
Youth Advisory,
Youth Advisory, they're still working on their first youth summit. That's going, it's fairly well. They're, younger and trying to figure out how to put on something like this for the first time. So I think it's gonna do well. We'll see how it goes. If not, it's a learning opportunity for them for next year. So that's exciting. And then I think the biggest thing is just procedural things. Like I wanted to let you guys know I love talking well of this board. And especially with past experiences, I love talking about how this group can really hear each other's opinions and ideas and come together and find some middle ground or really listen to the public and put them at the forefront instead of ourselves. And so I really love promoting that and talking about that. One thing that just comes to mind that I learned when I was first on the board that might be helpful for the board now too is just that kind of chain of command and have that flow. And I learned the hard way about chain of command in the fire service. With fire chief, he could tell you how I had to learn, while I was there, like there's a respect and accountability that you fall in line with. And I think when it comes to whenever we hear like things from the citizens, that's an outcry or something that's going on, just to make sure that we defer to staff to take care of issues, and then also to lean on the mayor to orchestrate, just because I think the citizens spoke with the election of a mayor that the majority said that this person is the leader of the board. And so falling in line with, procedurally with when we have outcry from citizens, obviously giving our personal opinion is important, I think, because we're gonna relate to different people, but I think sometimes we can get in the way as trustees when we try to divert staff to take action outside of the boardroom. So just wanting to bring that up is a way to keep us a great team, a functionality of a team that I think I really respect, because a lot of other communities don't have that, so.
Thank you.
Kudos
It's a good
to-
reminder to me too. I was actually going off, talking to Chris about something that I thought was weird but I didn't involve you guys, so I need to type this thing up and maybe bring it up at the next meeting. But yeah, I was about to do a one-off thing myself of something that was frustrating me, and I was like, wait, this isn't what the board might want to go, so I'll bring that up.
Well, thank you, and I've always appreciated that about you. I feel like it helps us gain respect with the community when we are public and forthright, and everything is here, even if we have, we were getting a bad rap during the marketing stuff, I don't know. I think we have a lot of communication we could do outside of this room, but when it comes to this room, I think it's awesome to bring those things up, and
Yeah, thank you.
it gives us good reputation.
And just for the May 9th, right, that's the Youth Advisory Summit?
That's correct.
And what time? I have it as 8 a.m. I can't be right.
It's in the evening. Yeah, it's in evening. There's a meal. So please.
I think it
let them
starts
know.
at 5,
Five,
but they had on the agenda that the town board was speaking at 8.
Okay,
We were the kind of the close up.
I'll just put it, okay, thank you.
And I know they wanted to interact with you guys and other town members to kind of have that, camaraderie building time amongst other communities. Okay, I remember the thing I wanted to bring up. I brought it up last time about maybe adding additional advisory committees, and I'd really like some traction on this, or maybe some feedback from you guys, whether we table this or move forward. But I really think a senior advisory committee is imperative, especially when we talk about things like raft and transportation going forward, or recreation, and to have them be a direct channel of advising us as a board on what they are, having consensus on as a group, I think would be really helpful. And then I also think the downtown business, like merchants district, to have them be in a public setting like this as well, where they get to voice their concerns about topics that are coming to the board. And there's accountability then for us to hear their opinion, and the community gets to hear their opinion as well, and have that influence our decision making, if that makes sense. I think those two committees, I know that's not a small task. I know that's a huge lift for staff, and it requires a lot more staff time, and I don't know how we designate, new liaisons for that as well, but to me, those are two missing components to our decision making that would help tremendously.
Yeah, I would be feeling on board at least looking into specifically the senior committee, because in the past couple years especially, a lot of their concerns have been a little bit more, I guess, randomly presented, just because if something comes up, the senior community will come to speak, but there's not necessarily an ongoing understanding between myself specifically and the community to understand how different things that we're doing are affecting them, or how things that are happening in the community are not affecting. I would be open to the business community, but I would ask, is there any sort of, I guess, legal repercussions to having business owners advising the board?
I think
Does that make
there's some
sense?
interesting questions about that. I think it's probably something that could be done. And it may be, if the board's supportive of it, we could just add this as an agenda item to an upcoming meeting, you guys, and that way we could have we can kind of review the current, and I think this is probably something we ought to do anyway. We ought to review the current scope of the committees. You know, what are they focused on? What does our actual, organizing resolutions say? What their purpose is, and then we can talk about which committees we should add. So if you guys are up for that, and there's no opposition, we'll add that to an agenda in the next, 30 to 45 days.
You guys support of that?
Yeah.
Trustee Hardy?
For the senior one?
All right, Trustee Hardy's up for the senior one. Is anyone up for the, let's just call it commercial for now. Maybe we could look at demographic areas or types.
I wonder if there could be a caveat that the business owners would also have to be residents of Berthoud, because then they would have a personal stake in those decisions, not just, it's not just financial.
I think some of that we can kind of flesh out during that meeting,
Are we supportive in general of having the talk about, it sounds like we are with the seniors. I just want to make sure before staff does it, we're interested in commercial.
No, commercial things, we've talked about Main Street being the DOLA program. It's more oriented to being more of a committee for town.
And I think as part of the conversation, we can kind of review, how do we interact with seniors? What groups are currently available? How do we interact with the business community, and what groups already exist? And then how would that change in the context of committees with the town, and where would we want them to focus their time and energy, and what kind of advice and feedback would we be looking for from them? And I think we can kind of talk through all those options with you, and then you guys can tell us which of those make sense.
Okay, sounds like, Trustee Wayne.
On the commercial one, that's someone's full-time job at the staff. He's business development. That's what
We
he
have a
does.
full-time forester too, but we have the tree advisory committee.
Okay.
I don't know why I just flashed back so hard.
Oh, really?
I think it's a good point, but I think that's something we could talk about. Also, getting trustee liaisons, I think we're all getting a little pressed on that, but I think it's a really good conversation. Sounds like we're supportive of having that conversation for both commercial and seniors.
And Trustee Wing, I think the reason why I see the need now is that it helps us be in the loop, because prior, the business conversations are happening outside of this room and we're really not informed. And so when we're making decisions, we don't have the feedback of the business community on how it's impacting them, our decisions. And I would really like to have that going into our decisions going forward, is just know what they've said and have it be in a public format, so there's accountability at the staff level to say, is our staff supporting them and the needs that they were bringing up, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think part of our role is to do that in our jobs, right? When something comes before us, do we approve it or not? And we kind of speak louder with our vote sometimes than some of that other stuff. But no, I mean, it's another very important thing for the town. So can't hurt the discussion.
Yeah. Thanks.
We'll add it to an agenda.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I've got a few things. Following HB 25-1272, that would be the mental housing adjustments. That passed the House and it's going to the Senate, and it's going to have a hearing on April the 10th. Let's see. No word from Director at CDOT to Director Paddock on her traffic unit, checking out the crossing and stuff. I'll let you guys know as soon as I hear from her. My hope was we could talk it over with the SDE, because they are eager to go above and beyond what they've been guaranteed by CDOT currently, which is a crossing guard.
Which had they have, I saw that person.
Yeah, it's my understanding, I got an email from Todd Picone.
Yeah.
That they are interested in something beyond that. I will report back if I hear anything on that, but it'd be nice to have those discussions if we can go forward with more protective measures at that crossing. What else? Had the honor of serving on the interview committee for Berthoud Elementary. We had some interviews this week for a new principal. And the TSD board chose Becky Rusin to be the new principal down there. She's from San Jose, California. Seems incredibly qualified, and if you see her around town, I hope you welcome her.
Can I ask you a question on that when you're done?
Yeah.
So, the United States spends more on students than any other country in the entire world. In the top 40 progressive countries, advanced countries, we rank 40th. We're a disgrace to the rest of the world in our education. And I just wonder, as you were going through that process in an important role, maybe criteria or commentary on really the failing of our educational system.
I don't know if that's a road I want to go down tonight, but I'd be happy to talk with you on it. I'm actually kind of sworn to secrecy on what we discussed at the interview process, but her credentials are now publicly available if you want to check those out. Beyond that, let's see. I wanted to check in on Dark Skies Committee appointments. Do we have a full committee for that currently?
We do not.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up, hosting the fire chief tonight was excellent, I thought. I still very much strongly support this board putting forth a support resolution on this measure. I know it's hard for us to go forward with this, but I think their argument of diversifying their funds is justified. The need is certainly justified, especially seeing what we saw with the 80 fire. And I was kind of surprised, but not surprised, I guess, to hear that they're coming up short on their wildland funding. So I really would like to see this board support their effort.
Is there 4 others in favor of that? I support that.
I'm in favor. I just have one comment.
Yeah.
For all the same reasons that you're in support, I'm definitely in support. I do want us to recognize the impact to our local businesses this will have. As you know, tickets will go up in cost for people that, you know, go out to dinner and that type of thing. And so it puts more pressure on us, I think, to even come behind these businesses and support them and being successful. But I don't think there's any other way for the fire department to make up that difference. And so I think it's important that our citizens know that this is an exception that I think we need to support.
What does it look like when you say, are we in support? I don't know even what that
It'd be
means.
like a resolution, like a board position that we support this passing on the ballot on their election.
And if it's not unanimous?
Then we'd still put it on there.
Okay, my comment is I just think our people are overtaxed in every way, shape, and form. If we're gonna take from them, we need to give something back. And so I just don't think we're in an environment where our people can handle more taxes. So just for that reason, do I think they need it? Do I think they're important? All of the above. I just think there's a point where you just can't keep taxing people indefinitely.
Right, and I mean, I agree with both of those comments. I think because I would support a resolution because it really is still up to the choice of the voters whether or not to accept the tax. And I think unfortunately they're having to ask, or they gave that presentation because they're in need, right? And it's not up to us to make that decision as to what the voters are going to do, but I think giving a proposal for a recommendation explains the point of view that we wouldn't give that recommendation if we didn't think that it were necessary for their well-being And because they are so vital to the protection of the town and the area based on, obviously just recent events and you hear the trucks all the time going to and fro, for people in town, for people out of town. I'm more inclined to support resolutions like that because, as I said, and I'm just repeating myself, sorry, we're not saying that we are imposing a tax, it's up to the voters. However, they're coming to us as kind of almost a last resort before they have to make serious cuts, which is also going to affect their personnel. If they have to make more cuts, let's be honest, it's gonna be positions.
We're not approving a resolution to have it voted on. We're approving a resolution to say we're in favor of it. I just think that needs to be.
I think,
Yeah.
if there's support from 3 or more trustees, that's our practice. If you'd like to put it on an agenda, you'll need to approve a resolution, which you won't do tonight regardless. So the question is really, do you want to place it on the next agenda? Because that's the only other meeting prior to the election. So if there's support from 3 or more trustees, we'll prepare a resolution and then you guys can debate and consider that at your next meeting and choose whether or not to vote yes or no in support of that resolution. Does that make sense?
Support.
Okay. All right. We will go ahead and prepare that and put it on the next agenda.
Thank you, everyone. That's all I've got.
All right, MPO, mostly, I didn't write these down, unfortunately, I had to attend remotely, but it was just basically, the memorable part is just the amount of cuts that CDOT has to make. I almost just don't want to quote the number because I know it's going to be off, but I believe it was 60 million that they're having to cut. So a lot of programs, and that comes in the form of NPO grants that we can use. Funding that would be going to the NPO too from the federal government is also limited. So it's not only CDOT is having to restrict because the state has to balance their budget, but also funds that go to the Metropolitan Planning Organization for Transportation from the federal government are being held up. So one of them would be the Multimodal Options Fund, which is not just for roadways, and that one they're talking about completely suspending for the time being. So that's a huge grant opportunity that comes around that might not be in existence going forward. So of course this is up in the air. The other memorable part was Bustang itself is 30 million in the hole. So nothing, self-funding under government, but just that surprised me, the amount that Bustang is not, it's needing to be subsidized to that level. Of course, it's a massive network of Bustang, of course, uses I-25 and coach buses to get folks all around. But that 30 million was kind of surprising to me. Anyway.
Mayor?
Yes?
What's the ridership on Bustang? Are those buses full?
It depends. So I was told the ones that in the morning going to Denver are, but I guess some of these that are going elsewhere, Colorado Springs all the way out to Junction, and then they have programs that will go out to Telluride. Those might have less, and they had to cut one last year. That was like twice a week to Telluride. They completely cut it. I don't know all the details. I just know I think what's happening is the more rural ones need to be more subsidized than the ones going to Denver. But I should, let me get that number. Let me get that.
Yeah, I'm just, public transportation is always such a weird thing because services aren't provided unless it's being used, but it's not being used because services aren't being provided. And it's this sort of weird circular argument where, right. And so, anyway, thank you. I was just curious to see if they're in the hole because of ridership or if they're in the hole because of routes and not having access to ridership. And, with municipal transportation, often they cut routes or they cut times, but then it becomes impossible to ride because if you miss the bus, you're an hour and a half late for work and no one's going to ride it because you can't do that.
Or like maybe for birthdays, like getting out there might be a problem for some people with the Bustang. I know you were on the Fort Collins Transportation Advisory Committee, right? So, I remember you speaking about this earlier. Let me get those numbers for you, I think. And then I think Administrator Kirk might bring up the transit study session or summit, but I think that's a good discussion too on getting bats out to the Bustang mobility hub. I'll get that. Thank you. Behavioral Health Policy Council, very short meeting yesterday. They're now quarterly, but it was just an update. And I have a bunch of brochures. That was in Fort Collins, so I can get those. I think there's about 10 waiting for us, they said. Hopefully they'll be sending to us, but I guess otherwise I can go to Fort Collins and pick them up. But that was just a review of last year's programs, and that the grant funding, it will be open in May, and I think those will close in September. The problem with Berthoud, of course, always with mental health being able to apply is we have no real mental health nonprofits located in Berthoud. So really, until we can get the Life Center up and running, which will have a Summit Stone as part of that, these community grant programs aren't really applicable to us right now, since we have no nonprofits in town that can really apply for them. And the other part was that of course, they projected this from the very beginning, but the new behavioral health, the Longview, I think it's the name of the building, is at capacity. And sad, but also that's a good thing. That meant there was a real need, and it's being addressed. But so they're working on the phase 2 of that building now. But again, that Larimer County Sheriff, even in the very beginning, said we're going to fill that thing up in day one, and they were correct. So we have a lot of mental health need in the community, or in the region. And then they went by the numbers on the contributions, and it was kind of interesting to see. Of course, Fort Collins was several. I'll forward this email on to everyone, but several million in contributions to the program. Berthoud was around 400,000. Timoth was very high, and that was almost entirely sales tax due to the Costco. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I saw a little Timoth, and then turns out it was at Costco that's giving all the money to the mental health program. But that's all I have right now. I'll turn it over to staff.
The only thing for me is that on April 29th, that's a 5th Tuesday, it would traditionally be a study session night for us. We're working to finalize a plan for a transit-focused conversation, kind of transit summit. So that's Tuesday night, April 29th, here at this building. I'd like to start at 6 p.m., which is a little earlier if you're available to do that. If you're not available to attend, you don't have to tell me right now, just shoot me a note. We'll be sending all that information out hopefully tomorrow. So study session, but more of like a summit format with RAFT, the North Front Range MPO, representatives from the state to talk about transit in town as a follow-up to prior conversations we've had with RAFT here in these meetings.
Awesome.
I won't be in attendance for that one.
Thank you.
Mayor Karsbeck, it is late, and so I will be very brief, but I wanted to make the comment while it's fresh in everybody's mind about the public comment section of the meeting. It's really important that everybody who comes up to that podium have a rule and an expectation. And they know what that rule is, and they know what that expectation is. And that's what creates and protects fairness and transparency. And if you're gonna start to have a dialogue with a one person one night, you've violated that rule. People no longer have that expectation. They come to the next meeting wondering if, oh, is so-and-so gonna have a dialogue with so-and-so? So I would just urge you, dialogue is not a good word. It's really the antithesis of what public comment is about. That's not to say that when those 3 minutes are over, that the mayor, who I think does a marvelous job of this, tosses that question or directs that question to the town administrator. But I would urge you in the name of fairness and transparency to have a rule so that everybody knows what the rule is and have an expectation so everybody knows what the expectation
Sure,
is.
it makes a lot of sense. So get all your questions out, and then we can have Administrator Kirk answer those as much as we possibly can.
You're right, and there really shouldn't be anybody but the mayor having that response. So, and then you have this opportunity at your report time, and I know it's primarily for your reports, but, you know, it's a little bit informal, and you can come up with sort of, well, if I could have responded, I might have said this because I talked to Ann Johnson. So, you know, I think I just really want to urge that you have a rule and you have an expectation. Everybody knows what it is, and everybody abides by it. That's fair, and that is transparent.
Thank you for that. Noted and appreciated. Chief Do you have any updates, anything? Great. Quick, so, all right, I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you.